I'd like to call this meeting of the Sacramento City Council to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Warren. Councilmember Harris. Councilmember Carr. Councilmember Jennings. Councilmember Guerra.
Here.
Vice Mayor Hansen.
Here.
And for the record, Mayor Steinberg. Councilmember Ashby will be here momentarily.
Great.
Did you call me? I did. Councilmember Chenier? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do you want to do your announcement or should we do the pledge real quick?
I pledge.
All right, will everyone please join me in doing the Pledge of Allegiance? Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't believe we have any report out from closed session, although I don't see the city attorney, so.
Do my decorum. Thank you. This meeting is being video streamed and can be viewed live on the city's website or viewed later from the archive files. Members of the public who wish to address the council should complete a speaker slip, which can be found at the back of the room. Speaker slips need to be turned in to the clerk prior to the beginning of each item. And so that everyone has the opportunity to address the council, members of the public are asked to observe the rules of decorum. The council rules of procedure outline decorum expected in the chambers and can be found on our website. A copy is at the back of the room and is summarized on the back of the speaker slip. For instance, use of swear words, yelling from the audience, physically threatening conduct, and displays of disrespect are discouraged. The presiding officer will request that a person cease disruptive conduct, and if not immediately stopped, the presiding officer will direct the person to leave the council meeting. Each speaker has 2 minutes to address the council. A cordless microphone or assisted listening device is available upon request from the clerk. Please silence your cell phones or other communication devices and refrain from using flash photography or lights on video equipment. And parking validations are also available from the clerk at the front of the room. I do have a couple items to read into the record.
Please, Madam Clerk.
So item number 14, which is an informational item, it's a third-party appeal of I and 23rd Multifamily Development Project. This item is withdrawn in its entirety. I do have on the consent calendar, on item number 2, there is supplemental documentation passed out at the dais, which is a small change to the resolution. And then also item number 3 on consent, the total surplus funds for the Midtown AD and Tahoe Park West AD has changed from $49,000 to approximately $58,000, consisting of approximately $28,000 in the redemption fund for Midtown AD and approximately $30,000 in the redemption fund for the Tahoe Park West AD.
All right, Madam City Attorney, do you have a report out from closed session?
No, Vice Mayor, there's nothing to report out at this time.
All right, thank you, Madam City Attorney. Let's go to special presentations. Councilmember Jennings, I believe, has compassion awards tonight.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We do have the opportunity to present to you the 2018 Compassion Award winners, and it is my pleasure. This is our 4th year doing this. These are people who work in the residential care facilities and our skilled nursing facilities. They do the compassionate work of caregivers, of taking care of our elderly, those that are sick, those that have fallen on hard times, those who need care. And they do an incredible job. And I think each one of us has someone in our family that has needed help along the way. These caregivers give them that special love, that special compassion, special treatment, and they help them to heal in a way that only they can do so. And so it is my pleasure to bring up the 9 that are being honored. But before I do that, I'd like to bring up those who worked on the committee to select our Compassion Award winners, and that is Judge Rudolph Lonk. Most of you know him by Judge Barry Lonk. Would you come to the front, Judge? And then also from Absolute Compassion, I'd like to bring John Chimino. Before I bring the winners up for 2018, would either one of you like to have a word or two?
I'll take this opportunity. In our society, we have some sung heroes. The sung heroes are up in paradise fighting fires. They're doing a great job, and they are heroes, and they deserve our accolades. The caregivers who serve our elderly family, sick people, these are unsung heroes in our community. I laud Mr. Jennings for taking the time to sing their praises. I'm a frequent flyer of caregiving. I've been in nursing homes twice. My mother-in-law is having daily caregiving now. And the compassionate care that these people afford every day adds to the chances of recovering and recovering in a good time. So I'd like to thank Mr. Jennings for creating these awards, even though he makes me make a speech once in a while. Thanks.
Thank you, Judge. John?
Good evening. My name is John Chimino with Absolute Compassion Hospice, located in District 7. We want to thank the Vice Mayor, Councilmember Jennings, and the rest of the council for giving us a few minutes to recognize the work that caregivers do. It's, like Barry says, a lot of times not recognized, but it's tedious work, and it's work done by people that love what they do, and we appreciate the city taking a few minutes to recognize them. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So before I bring the 9 up, I just want to read a personal thank you to each one of them. The care provided by a kind, respectful, and compassionate caregiver such as you is essential to the positive quality of life for the elderly, the sick, and the disabled, whom you serve every single day. And your service greatly impacts their physical and mental well-being. Your distinguished service brings honor and credit to the families and friends, to the facilities where you work, and to this body, the city of Sacramento. We thank you with all our heart and soul for bringing compassion, for bringing caring, and for bringing professionalism to the lives of those that you serve. Yoon, would you bring the 9 honorees up to the front, please? All 9, would they come to the front? I just want to let you know that we've had a personal ceremony for them earlier today at 4 o'clock. We gave them a certificate thanking them on behalf of the council. We gave them a Starbucks card for the next time that they go to have Starbucks. And we gave them an ink pen with the city of Sacramento on it for them to be able to do whatever they choose to do with it. But we got a chance to honor them. And all of them are great in their own work, but only one of them can be the Caregiver of the Year. And at our meeting earlier, we announced the Caregiver of the Year. And that young man's name is Mr. Ray Tignley. Please give him a round of applause. Ray, wave your hand so everybody knows who you are. There you go. Would any of you like to have any words? If not, I'll come down and take a picture. And again, thank you very much for your work.
Oh, no, that's cool.
and gentlemen, the 2018 Caregivers of the Year right here.
Should be called up.
We do have Chief Loesch here. Chief? There he is. Chief, are you coming? Thank you. And Chief and the team and Sandra?
Mayor Steinberg, City Council, thank you for being here. I'm actually going to move out of the way because they tell me I smell too much because I just got back from the fire.
Oh
So
my
I'm actually
God.
gonna let
Thank
them
you.
do
How
the-
you doing?
The talking. We're doing okay. Our team in Sacramento, firefighters are doing excellent up there. I met with
How
all of
many?
them today.
How many are up fighting the fire?
We got 22 out total. So our members are doing well. So
Please, will you
fortunately,
bring them, I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but can you please bring the 22 to the City Council at some future date so we can say thank you in a very public way?
Absolutely.
We
I will.
appreciate it.
They're going to be about 2 weeks before they get back, so
Oh
I'll
my
let you know when
God.
they're back. So I'm going to let my executive team here speak.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We'd like to start by bringing up Chris Conlon. He's in the back, if we could. He'd
There he
gonna put him
is.
on the spot also. So as he's coming up, as you all know, in the spring of this year, Chris Conlon started wearing an additional hat to the many hats he was already wearing. And one of those was interim fire chief. And within the first, I would say even a couple days, he was loved by our department. And a department with a lot of rich tradition, that's a tall task at times. And he just came in and his leadership style was amazing. He just won our people over by his example. And so right away he just dove in. He started doing ride-alongs and 24-hour ride-alongs, and he was one of the first city management personnel to ever do a full 24-hour ride-along. And that instantly gave him a lot of street credit. So we appreciate that. And then shortly after, Mayor Steinberg, we appreciate you. You came in and you did a full 22-hour ride-along, and
In 10 minutes.
and 10 minutes. And I know firsthand that they drug you all over the city and gave you a tour of just about everything, and we can't tell you how much we appreciate that. When we come in and talk about the things that we're experiencing and just the call volume types, we know firsthand that you're aware of that. And so our hearts go out to you. We can't express our gratitude for that. So we have, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Andrew, but we have a couple tokens of gratitude both to you and Chris Conlon.
Very kind. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I just want to echo Chief Augustine's words. For the membership, our 600 members of the fire department, I've been on the fire department 27 years now, and I don't remember city management, high city management person ever doing a 24 ride-along. I don't remember ever in the city's history of the mayor doing a 22-hour and 10-minute ride-along in the city. So we wanted to do something special for you. We wanted to give a presentation and some gifts to thank you for stepping up and coming and seeing what we do. We see a lot on the news right now of the tragic fires in the north, but there's more to it than that. And I think that Chris Conlon and you, Mayor, you saw that other side of the fire service. You saw what happens on the other calls, on the other things that we do every day, on the training, on the 24-hour aspect, the 48-hour aspect that a lot of people don't get to see. So again, on behalf of my membership and all the firefighters in the city, and really the firefighters in the region, we want to thank both of you for coming out and seeing what it was all about. So we have a couple things for you guys.
Oh, thank you. Should I come on down? Okay.
we have our protected gear for each of the ride-alongs, both Assistant City Manager Conlon and Steinberg had all the gear, did everything that we did, a lot of different things that we had the mayor do and Chris do that, and they both stepped up and weren't shy at all. So we're presenting them with a couple of cheese helmets and the actual turnout coats that they wore for their 24 hours.
Our picture time.
By the way, council, the invitation's always open for anyone else. We always have, every day we're there, so we're more than happy to have you come along.
Do we get
Vice
hats
Mayor,
too?
can I say a couple words?
Please, Mr. Mayor, why don't, please address the council.
From the
Mayor.
dais, why not? 2 minutes. So this is really a huge surprise. And Angelique, I want to thank you for suggesting this. Because it was really one of the great experiences of my professional life. And I really don't need to be thanked for it because I was just kind of doing part of my job. And I learned so much. It was an incredibly rewarding experience to really, you know, as they say, step in the shoes of those who do the most important work, among the most important work in our city. And I will tell you, the level of physical conditioning and exertion that it takes to do this job 24 and 48 hours at a time, the difficulty of the situations that that our firefighters encounter, and then a long discussion to be had, not tonight, about our whole EMS system and how we ask the men and women of our fire service to be the first and last resort for so many of our society's problems, where they are left really holding the bag in many respects. And they do it without a complaint at all. And yet there are so many areas where I think we could be of help. And I know with our new fire chief and some of the things he's working on, thinking about together with the union and 522, that the best days of the fire service are ahead of us. But I have always had great regard and respect for the men and women of the fire service, but only more so after staying up for 22 straight hours.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Ashby would like to say something.
Good.
Sure. So, first of all, I want to make sure you get full credit here, because I noticed those guys didn't say all the things you did. Did you or did you not climb the Tower Bridge?
I did, climb the Tower Bridge, yeah.
And did you not have to carry a hose up 11 flights of stairs?
In full equipment.
Yeah, in full gear, right?
And walked uphill in a snowstorm as well.
And did you or did you not get up with every alarm, even though Mr. Andrew did not?
Well, there was one story that I wasn't going to talk about, but
Sure.
you answered. I answered every call in the middle of the night. Yes, I did. And Chris, who answered most every call except for the 3 a.m. call, but
Almost
that's okay.
every call, but not as many as the mayor. I just want to make sure that gets out there.
Part of the record.
Make the record clear. And I also wanted to say, first of all, I can make as many suggestions, but I didn't go do it. I fall into the category of elected officials who have not done a full ride-along. You have done that, and I think it's really important. I know it meant a lot to the men and women in our department. But beyond that, most of you know my husband helps run the emergency room for Sutter General Hospital in downtown, and you made many appearances there that night with our medics, and that was noticed too. There were many people saying, hey, the mayor's here, the mayor's in our emergency room at 2 o'clock in the morning. It helps our city
when the policymakers show up and are in the difficult spaces. So I want to thank you for being willing to go do that. And I want to thank the fire department and 522 for acknowledging that they did it, making sure that the public knows what they did, and also, you know, not making it easy for them. Show us what the job really doesn't do any of us any good if we show up to try to learn what you're doing and then it's not the real experience. So I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of our fire department, and I think this is a really big moment for the city of Sacramento, so thank you.
Thank you.
And Mayor, I had punched up to speak, but I just want to say a couple things. One is thank you and Chris for leading by example. I did get several calls from people that night worried about your tenure as mayor because you were training to be a firefighter. And so I think there were some fears that if Measure U didn't pass, you were going to get a new career with the fire department.
You better believe I would have.
But we're glad we get
Yes.
to keep you. We're glad we get to keep you. Obviously, what they're doing right now to help people in Northern California and just to deploy whenever there's a disaster is really amazing. I don't need to say that, but I do wonder, they gave you markings on your helmet that Mr. Conlon didn't have, extra reflective tape. Was that in case you got lost in the middle of the fire? They could still find you.
You could still find me. That may have been funny. In all seriousness, we, pray for all the men and women who are fighting those fires, and our police force officers too, who are up there. It is a horrible situation. Then we often forget the trauma that they sometimes experience witnessing some of what they have to witness on a daily basis. On the day that I was there, somebody jumped off a 15-floor building and killed themselves. Just the most horrendous things that they deal with, every single day that you and I don't have to deal with. And it's a special job and a very important job.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
While the mayor comes up, Madam Clerk, do you want to call this consent calendar? Do you have any speakers? No speakers on the consent calendar. Anything else to read into the record?
I read into the record items on number 2 and 3 earlier.
I would like to pull item 3 from consent. Is there a motion on the balance of the calendar? We have a motion on the consent calendar, a second from Alan Wayne Warren. Clutch right there. All in favor of the consent calendar minus item 3? Aye. Opposed, abstaining, motion passes. On item number 3, I just wanted to flag this. There were funds left over from 2 lighting assessment districts, one in Midtown and one in Tahoe Park. I know that we continue to do street lighting improvements, and so rather than have those funds go into the general fund, the Midtown funds I'd like to be applied to the Midtown street lighting project underway, and Mr. Guerra, to have staff work with Mr. Guerra on appropriate projects in his district.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Vice Mayor.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments? No?
Yes, I didn't understand what just happened.
So the staff had put on the consent calendar the closure of 2 assessment districts, one in Midtown that was used to put in street lighting, and one in Tahoe Park.
Yeah.
And so we still have street lighting projects underway that may come short of funds. And rather than deposit the $30,000 and the $28,000 into the general fund, save that in case those projects run over.
Okay.
Yep.
Have a comment on the consent
Yeah,
calendar.
we already passed it.
Oh, we did?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, never mind.
We can still go back. So any other questions on item number 3? No? All right, all in favor? Aye. Abstain? Motion passes. Sorry, Mayor.
So we did 3. We're on 10 now. If I may, just on the consent calendar, I'm sorry, I just wanted to make a comment on something. I know we already passed it, but if you guys don't mind. On item 2, just a fact, a proof point, if you will, may not speak to everything, but at least speaks to one thing. The single largest public works project in the entire city is the convention center, correct? Saul Balkan? Ever? Close. Or at least now, okay. Anyways, what we just approved in item 2 is the guaranteed maximum price for the Sacramento Convention Center renovation and expansion panel. And we were presented with a target range regarding the cost of the project prior to the passage of the local hiring agreement that we passed a couple of months ago. This project then was subject to that local hiring agreement. And the guaranteed maximum price came in within the range, not over the range. I just wanted to explain that because there's a lot of questions and continuing questions as we move forward on other projects about the price impact. And in this particular instance, which happens to be the largest public works project that we have, there was no appreciable price difference. And I wanted to point that out. Thank you. Let's move to item, 10. Here we go. Okay, this is the SHRA budget. Please, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm Russ Robertson, the agency's Director of Finance, and tonight I'm here to share with you the proposed 2019 budget for the agency. The annual budget is based upon the calendar year January through December and incorporates the activities of the Housing Authority of the City of Sacramento, the Housing Authority of the County of Sacramento, and as well as federal entitlement funds and local housing funds administered on behalf of the city and the county of Sacramento. The 2019 proposed budget is a balanced budget of $192.7 million, which reflects the estimated resources available to fund the projects, programs, and operations of the agency for 2019. As you can see from this chart, 89% of the agency's revenue resources are received from the federal government through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. The major federal programs administered by the agency include the Housing Choice Voucher Program, Public Housing, the Public Housing Capital Fund, the Community Development Block Grant, the Home Investment Partnership Program, and the Choice Neighborhoods Initiative Grant. Of the aforementioned programs, the Housing Choice Voucher and the Public Housing programs make up roughly 70% of their overall budget. Additionally, over the past several years, the agency has also assumed responsibility for the Shelter Plus Care Program, Emergency Solutions Grant, and Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS programs from the Sacramento County's Department of Human Assistance. The remaining 11% of the agency resources come from local and miscellaneous housing, housing trust funds, and housing successor funds from the former redevelopment agencies of the city and county. With such a large portion of the agency's budget dependent upon federal funding, it is imperative that we stay abreast of federal legislation. The next slide represents the proposed appropriation budget for 2019. It's another way of saying how the money will be used. As shown, 52% of the agency budget is dedicated for the housing assistance payments under the Housing Choice Voucher and Shelter Plus programs. 20% is for capital projects. 14% is for salaries and benefits. 9% for services and supplies. And the remaining 4% is for public service programs, debt service, and financial transactions. This slide provides just an overall multi-year budget comparison, the 4 years being prior year budget and the 2019 budget in comparison with variances to the right. As you can see, the 2019 budget represents a modest $2 million or 1.1% increase in net appropriations compared to last year's budget. The next two slides briefly retouch on the agency's two largest revenue streams, the HCV and the public housing programs. As mentioned earlier, the two together make up 70% of the 2019 proposed budget. The first chart of this slide shows 6 years of historical and 2 years of estimated leasing statistics for the HCV program, which is the largest program administered by the agency and makes up 58% of the budget. The HCV program provides rental assistance to program participants throughout the city and county of Sacramento. The Housing Authority has approximately 12,400 vouchers authorized for leasing each month through HUD. The second chart on this slide reflects the same period of time of estimated revenues, expenses, and reserves for the Housing Assistant Payments, or the HAP program. The agency's public housing program administers units located throughout the city and county of Sacramento. The units consist of various property types, from high-rise apartments to single-family homes. Program revenues are generated from tenant rent collections and operating subsidies provided by HUD. Since August 2017, the agency has been receiving a 93% subsidy proration. The slight decrease that you see on this slide projected for 2019 is based upon a combination of federal budget projections and the loss of a subsidy that we'll be experiencing through the Twin Rivers project that we have ongoing. The second chart reflects public housing capital funds, which is the money used to improve and maintain the public housing inventory. The capital fund experienced a unexpected 50% increase in funding last year, and for 2019, the funding for this program is not expected to remain the same. It should be more in line with 2017 levels.
Excuse me, could you go back to the previous chart?
Sure.
That one. That top chart, what is that telling us?
Of the 12,000, 4,000 vouchers that we approximately have to be administered through each month, our statistics show that we lease about 91% of those each month.
And the other vouchers we just send back to HUD?
Well, it's a combination, it's a calculation. So each voucher is on a dollar-for-dollar funding. So we utilize all the fundings that we do receive from HUD. It's just not enough to administer all the vouchers that we have available. Well, that concludes my portion of the presentation. I'll now turn it over to the Executive Director, Lachelle Dozier, for the remaining piece of this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I want to first start off with a kind of a high-level discussion of what's going on at the federal level with the budget and how things will be impacted at our local level. As you've just seen, the majority of our resources come from the federal government, so there are a few initiatives and things that are going on that are really important for our agency. So the federal budget and a continuing resolution. So final spending for the transportation, housing, and urban development was not approved before the 2019 fiscal start, which was October 1st. So HUD programs are funded under a continuing resolution, and that continuing resolution goes through December 7th. And now we need to really look at what our midterm elections and what impact that's going to have. As a result of the midterm elections, we really do see big changes will be in store for the 116th Congress for Housing and Community Development. The biggest question is, how will this new dynamic play out between the congressional chambers and the White House? The lame duck session of Congress will return this week to finalize unfinished business, and the newly empowered Democrats will probably assert their muscle, and Congress will attempt to deal with a wide range of issues, from dealing with the continuing resolution that expires on December 7th, all the way down to disaster relief in terms of things that are going on with our fires. Specifically, though, the impact on housing could be quite significant, particularly in the House. Under the Financial Services Committee and the Housing Appropriations Committee, that's where a lot of the work is done. we are looking at the Democrats taking control of the House, and that will also mean that they take control of those committees. So putting Representative Maxine Waters in charge of the Financial Service Committee, and we're looking at Representative Nita Lowry will be in charge of appropriations, both Democrats. It is expected that Representative Waters will focus on housing and HUD. She has for a very long time, has very, very strong ideas in terms of how HUD should be run. Also, a Democratic-controlled House will also likely focus on topics such as the impact of budget cuts on the programs, oversight of the programs, and how it will impact the subsidized housing residents. Those are things that are really big issues for them. Congresswoman Lowry has indicated that she will already negotiate very aggressively for a fiscal year 2020 budget deal to avoid the $126 billion in automatic cuts that will otherwise be required because of the Budget Control Act of 2011. So if you recall several years ago when I was here and I was talking about sequestration and the impact that it had on the agency, sequestration has not gone away. That is still something very much in play and something that will yet to be seen exactly how the two congressional houses will work together. But it's really critical during this particular time that we really have a lot of input and we really work with our national organizations, of which we are members of, and urge Congress to really finish up and come up with a budget for 2019 and start looking to 2020 already. So a lot of changes are going on in those committees, and those committees will impact what happens with housing. Also at the national level, the National Housing Trust Fund is another initiative that Congress worked on for over a decade, and finally we're starting to see those funds flow from the federal down to the state and then to the local level. The whole purpose of the National Housing Trust Fund is to increase and preserve the supply of affordable rental housing for extremely low-income households and very low-income households. The state allocations that received in the past years was in 2016, the National Housing Trust Fund sent $10 million to California. In 2017, they sent $23 million. In 2018, $36 million. So as you can see, it continues to grow, and that is another source of funds that we will be seeing coming to the state level that we'll be applying for. And in fact, we actually have an application in for one of our projects through the last NOFA that the state issued for the National Housing Trust Fund. In addition to that, we've also seen some very favorable initiatives that have been proposed. One of the ones that's pretty wide range in terms of legislation is one by U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren, and that's the American Housing Economic Mobility Act. This legislation would help level the playing field so that working families everywhere could find a decent place to live at an affordable cost. There are a lot of components to it, but some of the highlights is really to focus on rehabilitating 3.2 million new housing units for lower income individuals, and to really look at how to bring down rents in urban, suburban, and rural areas. In addition, the act also would put $10 billion into new competitive grant program that communities could use for infrastructure, parks, roads, or schools. It would provide down payment grants to first-time home buyers living in lower income areas that were formerly redlined or officially segregated areas to allow those families to start building home equity. It would invest $2 billion to support borrowers whose wealth was destroyed during the 2008 financial crisis. It would also focus on expanding the Fair Housing Act. So that is one of the initiatives that we are looking at very closely because it would have such a huge impact. Also, HUD has also realized that the landlords really do need to have more incentives to participate in the Housing Choice Voucher Program. We've seen locally how difficult it is, sometimes even when people have vouchers, for them to lease them up. So HUD has started up a landlord task force, and that really is to see what initiatives they can put in place to make it much more voucher-friendly for landlords. They began a landlord engagement campaign where they will start to have convenings and meetings and receive feedback and figure out how to streamline this process. We also know that there are other jurisdictions that have moved out aggressively to see how they can provide incentives for landlords to participate in the program. Those are some of the things that we have looked at in terms of best practices, and there are things like, can we make it easy for them to have kind of a time frame between the time that they accept a voucher holder and someone moves in, that they can get some financial relief. Can there be funds placed into a account so if there are any damages to the unit that the landlords would be able to use that as a way of relief? So these are all things that are being used by other housing authorities across the country, and something I think that we should be looking at. However, the way that the program is structured in terms of funds, those funds cannot flow from the federal government. So under our Housing Choice Voucher Program, they don't set aside funds for that. So local jurisdictions really have come up with funding from other fungible areas to deal with it. So the state of housing in Sacramento, as you know, we obviously have an affordable housing crisis, and that is what everyone has been dealing with across the nation. SHRA is the lead public agency for providing affordable housing in Sacramento, yet we're still in a constant battle and fighting for funding to house low-income families and homeless residents. We are continually targeted for cuts through the programs that we've been talking about, but we have been able to really leverage what we have to do to put together those housing units. And that's why we really strive very hard to make the best use of our limited resources and look for new opportunities. Last year, the governor signed a series of bills that create new and ongoing funding sources and policies to support affordable housing. This year, we saw even more legislation coming out to help ease the housing crisis. And the bills really focus on removing regulatory barriers for affordable housing. In addition, as you all are very aware, there was homeless housing funding that our mayor obviously championed for Sacramento, so we're glad to see that we're going to be benefiting from those funds for the HEAP, and that's $2.7 million to the county. That will go to Sacramento Steps Forward, but $5.6 million specifically to the city of Sacramento for the CASH program. So we're also looking at, how can we really start to combine and leverage? So as you look at the federal, you look at the state, and you look at our local resources, the leveraging is the way that you can do that. You have to bring some dollars to the table. They want to see that you have some skin in the game in order to be very competitive for these particular programs. So in order to make sure that we are pulling down state resources, it is really important that we use every single source that we have available so that we can be very, very competitive for any type of funding resources. So specifically, I wanted to really kind of just show in our next slide is what funds do we actually use for affordable housing? So we do receive federal funding from the HOME program. That's about, for 2019, about $3.4 million. Then we have the Housing Trust Fund, which is about $1.2 million is what we anticipate. And then our Mixed Income Housing Ordinance, which is about $500,000. So that's $5.1 million of funding for housing programs. So we have a lot of policies. The city has taken a huge step in setting the fee for regulated affordable housing and development to zero. So that was a major initiative that was approved by your body. I think that was a couple of weeks ago to encourage affordable housing production and make financing more affordable. But what we see is 3 times a year we put out our notice of funding availability, and we always receive more responses than we have money available. So it's not a situation that we don't have housing in the pipeline, we don't have developers who want to do housing. It really all boils down to what resources do we have to provide. We anticipate that our next round in January, we will receive proposals that far exceed the amount of funding that we have. So if we can figure out how to increase the pot, I think it's very easy for us to make sure that that money goes out to those developers who can do an excellent job of making sure that housing is available. So I just want to touch on some of the programs that have been funded through our budget and the council. In terms of our safety net programs, these are our federal programs. It was $5.3 million of federal funding in 2019, and that went to our homeless programs. Over 1,600 individuals were assisted. We have an emergency repair program. 115 plus families were able to take advantage of that, and 3 shelters that provided over 56,000 bed nights. Our Meals on Wheels program provided 350,000 meals to over 3,800 seniors who participate. And that is really critical. That's a lifeline for many of the seniors who really look forward, obviously, to that, but really need those meals in order to have their nutritional daily needs met. And then under our federal programs, CDBG, $2.2 million of projects were completed. So there's a listing there of all the different projects that we were able to bring to close as a result of the CDBG funds, like our Rio Linda Superblock cleanup and things that we've done in terms of pedestrian crossings, playgrounds, equipment, all of those types of things. And that's why it's very important for people to understand what's happening at the federal government flows all the way down to the local level. In terms of assisting affordable housing, $86.5 million in loans and MRB assistance we were able to issue for 540 units in the city, approved for rehab or new construction. So I'm very excited that we were able to do that, but obviously we would be able to do more if we had more funding. Then just to switch over and take a look at our public housing and our housing choice voucher. As Russ said, those are our 2 major programs, and really want you to get an understanding and snapshot of who we are serving. These are really the neediest of the needy. 40% of those are in our housing choice voucher, and our public housing program, about 46%, are headed by a female head of household. There are usually about 3 average family members, and the average income is only $13,800 a year. So that's the type of people that we're serving in these programs. But for our public housing, our housing choice voucher program, they would not have assistance. So we also have a large number of seniors, as you can see, between our public housing and our housing choice voucher program, and then disabled. Our housing choice voucher program serves 68% of them either have a disabled family member or the head of household is disabled. So very, very needed programs. We also do a lot of work in terms of working with our homeless, the 3-year strategy that we put together to house 1,755 individuals. 433 units were allocated in that first year, and 258 homeless families and individuals were housed. We also have under new construction 175 units. Then looking forward in terms of improvements and efficiencies, we really, as an agency, want to continue to work smart and focus on improving our customer service. We have an online rent payment tool for our public housing residents, so we're excited about that, and our whole website has been redesigned. We've expanded our communications through social media platforms, videos, so that people really understand who we are and what type of assistance that we provide. And then just as I wrap up on a couple of special initiatives and looking forward, what we'll be focusing on for next year. Obviously, this is the Twin Rivers redevelopment project. We've talked a lot about that and all of the work that's going on there. We completed the first phase of relocation and demolition, now moving on to the second phase, and then we'll move into the infrastructure work. We're also looking, and the majority of the residents have all been relocated. We're down to maybe about 15 or so residents who still are living on site. Our rental assistance demonstration program, we talked a lot about that, our RAD program and all of the work. That is one of the most major initiatives and changes in public housing that we've seen in the past several decades, and will allow us to address all of that backlog and deferred maintenance. In addition, our Promise Zone, we did a lot of work and continue to receive that federal designation that came in 2015. Over $111 million has been leveraged through the Promise Zone. So again, $111 million in federal and state funds have been awarded to organizations serving residents and communities within the Promise Zone. And then the last thing is our opportunity zones. This is the kind of the newest and most exciting thing. This was created by the Federal Department of the Treasury under the Tax Cuts and Job Act of 2017. Basically, it's a new capital gains tax break. It allows investors to take their capital gains and invest it into qualified zones in return for tax forgiveness. It's an equity investment, not debt or loans or grants, but an equity investment, and they do expect a return. So opportunity zones are the census tracts that have been designated by the federal and state. California has received their qualified opportunity zone designation. And the designation is really a valuable tool that's really to spur investment into our low-income communities and promote economic growth and job creation. So there's a wide range of possible eligible investments, everything from affordable housing to workforce development to infrastructure. We've been very involved with a cross-section of partners convened by Valley Vision and have been meeting for the past couple of months to really get a handle on and understand it. The group really represents the best of your public, private, and nonprofit sector and how to really take advantage of opportunity zones. But the key focus for opportunity zones for local jurisdictions is to build a pipeline of projects with investment opportunities. So if there's anything that I guess the biggest takeaway is those jurisdictions that are really looking for projects that are ready to go as these guidelines are finally finalized. The investors are out there. They are scouring the nation looking for those jurisdictions that have projects that are ready to go. So when they can see an economic return to their investment, then they will actually participate in opportunity zones. With that, concludes my budget presentation, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. So I know I have some members about, maybe just one quick question about the opportunity zone issue. Are you, the agency, actually working with stakeholders and thinking about potentially bringing forth a strategic plan for how we maximize the use of these opportunity zones? Because everyone, including yourself, says this is going to be a great tool, but I know that there is some regulatory ambiguity at the federal level at this point in terms of exactly how it will work. And I just, rather than just bring forward the first project that includes an opportunity zone possibility, are you thinking more broadly about actually presenting to us in workshop form as an action item or something, a more strategic long-term view of how we use these opportunity zones in a maximally effective way?
Mm-hmm. Really, our lens has been on opportunity zones has really been focusing and looking at it in terms of, number one, like you said, how does it work, and then what impact that could have from an affordable housing perspective. But from an economic development perspective, I think that's really where the city needs to put a lot of its time and energy in these low-income areas. We've done a lot of the preliminary work, obviously, with promise zones and things like this, but this is really a bit different. And so it should be a joint effort between the agency and the city manager's office to really come together for that strategic overview.
Good. Appreciate that. Look forward to that. Just on that point, quick.
On that point, I know that our economic development team is working on that piece already, and a big chunk of the opportunity zones throughout the city. Particularly in the largest chunk, which is in the industrial area there, but it does encompass the Twin Rivers area and the downtown area. So, I don't know if you guys have looped in together, but I know our current, Leslie and our team over there are doing amazing work, and Michael Hassel's shop over there are working on that now.
Good. Okay, let's take up the members who are up in the queue here. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Lachelle, I have a few questions for you. First, I'd like to thank you for the presentation on the federal information, because obviously what happens to HUD directly affects SHRA and therefore the city. Good news about the Housing Trust Fund, and especially about Maxine Waters. That bodes very well, so I appreciate hearing that. Looking at the budget, I see that salaries and benefits are up 11.6%, and I believe I read in the staff report that you were looking to bring on 4 FTE. Mm-hmm. Are those new FTE directly related to Twin Rivers, or is it across the board? And if they are, what will they be doing?
So the FTE are directly related to the Twin Rivers project, and so we will be bringing on people, bringing on some staff to assist us as we start to get involved in the infrastructure and all of the work. And we have evaluated the cost of adding additional staff that will be able to assist us versus allowing the developer to take on that work. And so we heard your direction to make sure that it's as cost effective, so it's actually cheaper for us to take on the management of that responsibility with additional staff versus contracting it out. So that is
I
correct.
appreciate that. How's it going with the TCC grant app? Did that get submitted?
The TCC grant, yes, was submitted, and in fact, we have a site visit that is scheduled for next week on Tuesday, 27th. The 27th. So we are gearing up for that particular site visit where they'll come out in the afternoon of the 27th. So we're trying to determine exactly how many people we're competing against. It's not a large number, we do know that, so we feel our odds are.
So you're feeling optimistic?
Why not?
Cautiously.
Yes,
Yeah.
cautiously
Got
optimistic.
it.
Mhm.
Yeah, one thing I've been wanting to ask you about is the RFI process we did for homeless housing. So that got issued, and then it kind of, I haven't heard anything further. So can you just kind of sketch out where we're at in that process?
So we did have it, and you're referring to the RFI for tiny homes?
That's right.
Yes. So we did issue the RFI, and we received those proposals back. And what we noticed is there were people who were manufacturers and who were very good at building the housing. And what we were looking at is how to pair them up with the people who could do property management and the social service component, you know, because we want to use those for homeless housing, not just for regular housing. And so we actually had some convenings to bring the two, kind of marry and bring the two together. In addition to that, we've had an opportunity over this time to actually go out and tour some of the tiny homes. So we've had staff who've gone to LA to take a look at some of the proposals that we received and actually see it in action. We've actually been able to go to a tiny home last week. And this was one on wheels that was, I think, about maybe 200 square feet. So we've actually been taking a look at all of those, and I know that we have some additional meetings and are looking at trying to bring that back for council relatively soon in terms of what we found.
So will the HEAP funds help bridge that gap between the people who can create homes and then the management piece?
Absolutely. We need to look at the most fungible sources of funding that we can find to really address the tiny homes, because that's one of the challenges. It's not so much physical buying or getting the tiny homes. It's the long-term operation that goes along with it.
As you well know from 7th and H and other properties that you manage.
Exactly, yeah.
So I get all that. Well, I think that's it for my questions. I'd like to open and close the public hearing and move the item.
Good, very good. Moved and seconded. Thank you. Councilmember Ashby.
I'm not last either, so. I'll be really super brief. I just want to tell you good job, and every time you do this presentation, I am impressed with how much you're doing with how little. The entire time that I've been on this council, 8 years, the SHRA division agency has been reduced and reduced and reduced for a variety of reasons, budget cuts, redevelopment, all those kinds of things, and challenged constantly about this process versus that process, or having the county versus the city. And I'm just always impressed with how much you and your team managed to move forward, even inside of all of those challenges. And so the bottom line for me is good job to you and your team. I know you guys work really hard, and I want you to know it's noticed. And then second of all, from this council's standpoint, or at least mine, as the new governor takes his position, and I know our mayor has some really strong relationships there, I know we all would like to see some version of housing redevelopment coming back. And so if there are things that we can do as a council to be supportive of you in that effort, whether it's show up together to something or take a position, or I'm sure the mayor's already engaged, but
I just want to say I didn't do it.
Okay. Sure. But moving forward, though, we can fix it. So moving forward, though, to the extent that any of us can do anything, I know the mayor's already engaged in it, but individuals, us, council members, I know Alan and I talk about it all the time, for example. I'm sure we'd both be more than happy to appear. And I remember last time that there was a discussion around the fate of redevelopment. You did come and ask some of us to be present in hearings, and I just want to say I know for myself I'd be willing to do that again. I'm sure Jay in Law and Ledge could probably take up an official position too, or write a letter, or as that conversation is developing. I think that is from my vantage point, a critical component for Sacramento in everything that we're trying to do, everything that this council has prioritized around, you know, not wanting to just do shelters, but to do wraparound service models like you have done with Hotel Berry and Mercy Housing and all of that. In order for us to get there, I know we have to win this fight. We can't do it on our own. So you tell us where we fit into that battle and help us get there. I want to be a support to you in that. So thank you, Michelle.
Excellent. Okay, Councilman Carr.
Thank you, Mayor. Michelle, focusing in on the time between the landlord accepting a voucher and the time that the person can actually move into the house. Some portion of that is devoted to an inspection, as I understand it.
Right.
And those inspections are taken 2 weeks?
On average, it usually depends, but it's not immediate. It does take a couple of weeks.
Is there something in the budget that would increase the resources so we could shorten that period of time?
There isn't anything that's in the budget that can decrease that. What we are talking about is landlords, if they have some assurances that you can start paying on the unit, so it kind of gives them a grace period, then that's another incentive for them to be a part of the program. That was what I was talking about under landlord incentives. So.
And that's where we don't have the money.
No, we don't have the money for that. But I think that is one of the things that we have talked about under different programs and trying to put something together.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things, Lachelle. Nice presentation. I think the work that you guys have been doing is appreciated. Also, I know that, I mean, we have a huge undertaking that the mayor has talked to all of us about, and really trying to really work through this housing crisis as well as the crisis around the homeless situation in this city. And so, and I think maybe the mayor has, if he hasn't spoken to you, will be speaking to the redevelopment agency about really a collaborative effort to really help drill down on some concrete solutions that we're going to, as a council, work on to really take a big bite out of this homeless issue. And I think the mayor's come up with a great plan for the entire council. But it's inclusive of the redevelopment agency, so I just want you to be prepared to and be on the lookout for what's coming and to stand by and be ready to help. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you. Yes, we've been talking, and the agency, of course. Oh, we got Councilman Guerra. I'll save my comments for the end here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lachelle, thanks again for all this, for this presentation. Did want to thank your staff again for their work on helping with the passage of SB 481 to help us move that property on the San Juan Motel over on Stockton Boulevard. I hope that this next year you'll also work with the Law and Legislation Committee to figure out maybe there's ways that we can tap into the looking at the greenhouse gas reduction funds, and then maybe pushing some conversation about how corridors that aren't on rail lines and have high functioning routes, Stockton Boulevard, Meadowview, I think it's the 81 that's over there, to be able to be eligible for affordable housing dollars, because right now those corridors wouldn't be eligible. So maybe in the efforts that the mayor's doing to get more state and federal resources, we can look at some of those. But thank you.
Absolutely. I think that's a key part of looking at how redevelopment comes back, redevelopment 2.0 or whatever you want to call it, is addressing exactly that, those corridors.
Very good. Vice Mayor Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Schneer likes to say that budgets are really policy documents, because where the money flows is what's going to happen. And I think you've laid out a really aggressive plan here for the agency. I know, though, the things that we've grappled with, what's the future of public housing? How do we as a city address the affordability crisis and continue to build subsidized affordable housing? You've had some significant wins, getting the Shasta renovated, the Pension K. There's just a number of things that we've done. And I know that there's a number of things that we're working on You alluded to Capitol Park Hotel. I know we're still working on Lavender Courtyard. 1717K, thank you for the efforts there to move that along. I know, though, too, that we've had these conversations about like how to close some of those gaps. So at some point, you know, it's probably less of a budget point, but really the point about a strategic plan. The multifamily lending guidelines that were passed in 2009 laid out the repositioning strategy, and now that we've done RAD, and we've worked through a lot of those significant assets that were really due for rehabilitation, although I know we still have more. A lot of them have ended up in my district. I'd like to figure out how we collaboratively set about that process, and you kind of mentioned working with city staff and your team, but maybe there could be, I'd love for you and maybe Assistant City Manager Hasso to present a plan back to the council about how to put together that strategic effort. So we could at least have a say and help to make sure that it's holistic is probably the word I would use. You know, there's no one better at leveraging money and try to bring that money into the community. I hope and pray that this Congress, as we go into the new one, sees the value of housing as a priority. We have not had that for the last 2 years, and it's certainly shown in the limits of what we can do locally. So thank you for your work, and let's press on. Yep.
Thank you. Councilman Jennings.
Just very quick.
Sorry.
Just very quickly, great job, great presentation. Ditto on everything that my colleagues have already said. We enjoy working with you and the department. Incredible work, and great to have you on our team. And we had an opportunity to review this at the Budget and Audit Committee. And one of the things that we talked about moving forward is doing a better job of working together for SHRA to be a part of our budgeting process. And so I'm looking forward to that because I think that will bear fruit. And if there are resources available to help us deal with affordable housing and or our homeless, whatever the case may be, I'm sure we can find it as we work together within that budgeting process. So looking forward to the future. But great job so far to the past and to the present.
Thank you, Councilman Jennings. A couple last comments, if I may, and then we do have some public testimony. A comment and a question about the Housing Choice Voucher Program, especially in light of the fact that there now is a Democratic House and maybe some opportunity to negotiate some better agreements that benefit public housing. You know, in the healthcare area, there is the so-called 1115 waiver, which is the federal healthcare waiver that is actually formed as the basis of our whole person care project. It allows us to rely on federal Medicaid dollars to be used for whatever it takes, so to speak, to help the homeless population. Obviously, we got $64 billion, including private resources, and we're on the ground. It seems to me that with housing choice vouchers, that as you develop our advocacy program, and you have great connections back in Washington, D.C., and a lot of good relationships, that there ought to be some flexibility around housing choice vouchers. Because one of the things I note, Jeff Harris asked the question about the current status of the request for information on the tiny homes. And we look forward to that presentation. I know you've got 3 live proposals and things that we're going to be able to work with, but I also know what the limitation has been. That those kinds of innovative projects don't fit the federal guidelines. If you don't have the right kind of, infrastructure, the right kind of electricity and plumbing and all this business, which I'm not saying is, this regulation standards sometimes have an appropriate place, certainly around health and safety. But we're trying to bring people out of the darn cold here and trying to get them into shelter. And so if we can't use the housing choice voucher because the plumbing is not up to federal standard or whatever the heck else they demand of us, then we're not able to use those dollars in a way that is most helpful. So I'd like you, please, as you're working with our lobbyists back there and others, to see if there might be something comparable to the 1115 waiver for housing choice vouchers so that there is more flexibility so we can use these federal dollars in the same way we're going to use the HEAP dollars that have no strings attached, where we're able to innovate and house people. Second point, tax increment. Councilmember Ashby, we joke a lot about it because we joked a lot about it in the campaign and all that jazz about my role in this. But here's the truth of the matter. There is a lot of talk and possibilities around bringing back tax increment. There's no question about it. But it's harder than you think because it's a money issue. It's just pure money. Everybody wants to do it, but then what do you take from to pay for it? And the surpluses at the state level are large, but not that large. And so we're going to have to really organize and figure out how to do this and how to be focused in a way. And let's not call it redevelopment, by the way. It's really, it's a different form of permanent, it's a different permanent source of housing. Funding mechanism is really what it is. And so I look forward to working with you on that last comment. And other members have alluded to this. I think it's very, very important. It is a new day in Sacramento when it comes to economic development. And with the passage of Measure U and the council's focus on economic development in a more intensive way, Project PowerStep over the last year, it is essential that we somehow, even with your different budget cycles than the city's budget cycles, given the federal budget cycles, that we somehow, that we see more presentations where you and Mr. Jasso are presenting together around our shared economic development goals here, because it's housing, it's economic development, CDBG, it's all the tools you have combined with the tools that we are gaining to figure out how we make the biggest impact, a transformational impact in our city and especially in our disadvantaged neighborhoods. And so I just want to think of, you've always have been part of and thought of yourself as part of the city and the county team, but as we talked about it at the Budget and Audit Committee, SHRA is also a unique entity in that you have two reporting authorities. But at the city, I'd like to see as much of this as possible under our economic development umbrella, with you as the co-lead, obviously, as the head of the agency, but more together, please. Okay, let's hear from the public.
I have 3 speakers, and they asked to be called up together: Katashna Caldwell, Norris McJimsey, and Carolyn Williams.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening. Good afternoon. Yeah.
My name is Carolyn Williams. I'm here on behalf of Twin Rivers, and the longest I've been there is 18 years, and I never had a problem. I see to that. So, and everything that goes on around there, I go to the office, and they're there to fix whatever's bothering me.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, members of the council. I'm Katasha, and I am a member of Twin Rivers. I have been relocated, and I'm involved in, they have a lot of programs, trainings, which I am involved in. I was a student. Now I'm an instructor for a WELL program, which is With Every Heartbeat is Life, and it's a health and wellness program. And I'm a community peer leader for the North Zone for Twin Rivers. And I hold monthly meetings to keep the residents that have been relocated informed. Like tonight, my meeting on the 21st, I will be explaining to them this meeting for the ones who couldn't attend. And for the wellness program, it's, I'm sharing this knowledge with other residents who are interested in the wellness and health. That's pretty much it, but I have been a resident for 12 years, and I've seen a lot of improvement, Good. And I do look forward to moving back. I will relocate back once the project is done, so I'm really looking forward to that. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Can I
for your
just say
time.
thank you for taking a leadership role, as you've just described. It's really important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, council members, my name is Norris McJimsey. First off, I was part of that wellness program, and that was a great program. But I'm actually here to speak up on SHRA's Changing Lives. I am a perfect example of that. I was a resident of Twin Rivers, and before the facility got ready to tear down, they offered us a 6-week program in order to get involved in the building trade. A lot of people were a little skeptical, but quite a few of us got involved into the program. And becoming a graduate of the program, we've gotten actual work. We had we received a certificate for North American Building Trade Union Apprenticeship Readiness Program, which opened the door for us for everything in construction and building. We have 15 graduates of our program. 3 of us has actually went to work at Twin Rivers for the demolition part of it. So we're looking forward to the second phase, which begins at the second part of the year. And I was at the SHR meeting last week, and I had to thank them for initiating the program. And I had to come here and thank you, the council, because I know you guys are really involved in moving things and shaking things. You guys are the movers and shakers of the city. And we're watching you guys right now. We're watching everything going on. And you guys are doing some positive things in my eye and a lot of us eyes who are in low income and housing. You offered me a job and an opportunity in the trade of every field is open to us. I mean, my teacher was Kevin Brown. He showed incentive. He took us back to our basics, and he built a lot of real self-esteem. It's a lot of residents that have moved out of there, but they're watching us, and they're looking back, and they're talking to us, and they want to know what's going on. And we let them know we're firsthand involved, and they're really supporting us. SHRA is still carrying us on. There are some fun issues involved, which I don't know about. We're always in classes. There are classes open to us. We get the abatement classes, asbestos classes, building, electronic. Every field is open to us now because we completed this program, which they allowed us to do. I know my time is running out, but I really wanted to thank you, Council.
Mr. McJincy, please come back every week.
Bless your heart, Mayor. And I thank you all for your attention. And I do have to say, in the last minute thing from SHRA, Edward Lewis is our voice for us there. And he has really been doing a lot, and he has really kept in contact with us. And I want to thank you all for any involvement you all might have in that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We appreciate it. We do have a motion and a second. Thank you to the entire SHRA staff, too, for all of your hard work, and many of you are in the audience here tonight as well. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? That passes. Thank you. The budget passes. Thank you so much. From redevelopment to cannabis. Mr. Devlin. After you. Okay.
That can happen automatically.
Mr. Devlin?
Good evening.
Before you get into the presentation, can we just, because I think it would be helpful to everybody, just to set the context for this hearing, what the action item is. It's not to approve additional dispensaries tonight, correct?
Correct.
It's to refer the item to Law and Ledge.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Joseph Devlin with your Office of Cannabis Policy Enforcement tonight. Before you tonight with a discussion item really for you, my presentation is one of, I think, context of our current dispensary program, if you will. So a lot of this is going to be history, and then I'm hoping that I can maybe answer any questions and take back some direction to the Law and Legislation Committee. So the context of all of this is around in 1996, with the passage of Proposition 215, cannabis collectives became legal. And it was a long time between 1996 and 2009 when the city of Sacramento first began looking into regulating cannabis. around that 2009 period of time, we had approximately 50-plus cannabis dispensaries that were operating under the Prop 215 model. They were collective cooperatives. In 2010, 910 City Council said, rather than shutting all these down, said literally don't move. And began the process of adopting a regulatory framework for our cannabis dispensaries. We created a Phase 1 and Phase 2 registration process, and through all of that ended up with approximately 30 dispensaries. Well, we ended up with 30 dispensaries. This was a self-selected group, and the distance requirements that the council adopted did not apply to those that were existing and operating at that time. Some of those dispensaries were forced to move or relocate for a variety of reasons, and once they had to move, they also had to comply with our distance requirements, and that really pushed any dispensary that had to locate into two portions of the city, one being in Council District 6 in that Power Inn Alliance Southeast Industrial area, and the other area where they became concentrated was in Council District 2 to the north. So our registration Phase 1-2 process essentially created a de facto cap. We went from 50 or so dispensaries to 30 in November of last year. We cleaned it up and just recognized that the 30 dispensaries was the number that we had. This is a brief breakdown of dispensaries by council district. As I said, when dispensaries were forced to relocate for a variety of reasons, including federal actions or evictions from landlords, the city's distance requirements really pushed them into two parts of the city, in Council 2 and Council District 6. We have begun to see relocations of dispensaries. We currently have a number of applications to relocate, including a couple out of Council District 6. These are really retail functions, and so what they, I believe, as it's been expressed to me, they desire to be near population centers and more traditional retail formats. So for example, there's a dispensary that is relocating to Broadway in the 20 block. There's one attempting to relocate to 16th Street in Councilmember Hanson's district. Another one attempting to relocate to J Street in Councilmember Hanson's district. So we're beginning to see the reshift of these dispensaries. Just as a comparison, I was looking for things to attempt to compare this to. I don't have an exact map of where all these are, but we have almost 300 liquor licenses in the city of Sacramento. So how many dispensaries should the city of Sacramento or should any city have is a very broad and difficult question to answer. There is not a golden rule, if you will, or some magic ratio. Here are the cities in California that we pulled out, and you'll see it's a little bit all over the map. You take a look down at the bottom of that chart, and you have cities like Denver and Portland, which are similar-sized cities in population to Sacramento, and they have a much larger number of dispensaries than we certainly currently do. So while I'd love to stand before you and say this is, clearly the number of dispensaries that the city can handle, that information just simply doesn't really exist. And I think this is one of the benefits or very good parts about Proposition 64 is the amount of local control that it gave local municipalities and counties. Was that they got to choose what was right for their city. So if the council does decide to add some number of dispensaries, we currently have a process of a lottery. The details of that lottery would be developed by the city manager's office. The council has already adopted a policy that priority would be given to core equity program participants. We would lay out that process before the council and host a lottery. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions and certainly listen and take direction.
Okay, we have a number of members up. We also have public testimony. Why don't we hear from members of the public first, then we'll have a council discussion.
Thank you. I have 6 members to speak. First is Malachi Aman, Trey Ish, then Elsley Simons Jr.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm Malachi Aman of the California Urban Partnership, also here representing the Build Black Coalition. I want to thank the mayor and members of the council for your leadership and making equity a priority in our city. We now, obviously, as a result of this conversation, are now charged with achieving equity, implementing the core program. On the matter of storefront dispensary licenses, the Build Black Coalition had some extensive conversations about, how the look and feel should be. And there are 3 things that we'd basically like the council to consider as this makes its way through Law and Leg and then back to you for an item to vote on. And that is to expand the current cap of 30. Consistent with the goals of the core program, we're asking that 50% of all cannabis dispensary licenses go to core participants. To increase, and number 2 is to, as we're increasing the cap for core participants, have that licensing be awarded based on a first come, first serve, as opposed to a lottery system. That seems to be fair and equitable, given how the current 30 got their licenses. They didn't have to go through a lottery. And then finally, to ensure that storefront dispensaries licenses are not transferable, we'd like to ensure that these licenses are not abused and have an impact on repairing the economic damage of the war on drugs. Thank you.
That's just a very quick clarifying. So Malachi, on the 50%, is that of new licenses or all licenses? You said you want 50% of all licenses to go to core participants.
Well, there's the city through the core program, the city has a license, a goal, of 50% of all cannabis licenses to core program participants. That's the city's current goal. Now, in terms of dispensaries, there is no equity applied to the current crop of dispensaries. As a matter of fact, not one of the current 30 are owned by an African American. And so, we would like to have, as part of the process going forward, looking at how we can achieve parity in the dispensary licenses that are issued.
So the goal would be, if we added 10 licenses, your goal would be that 20 are owned by core program or folks out of the core program. I just want to be clear.
I think that's up for discussion. It depends on how many the city adds to the cap.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Very good. Keep going.
Next speaker is Trey Ish, then Elsley Simons Jr., then Greg Vaughn.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and Office of Cannabis Policy Enforcement.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in front of you tonight. My name is Trey Ish, and I'm Director of South Sacramento Care Center, one of the dispensaries in Sacramento. I'm here to address a matter before us today, which is considering changes to the number of permitted dispensaries. Right now, Sacramento has one of the highest ratios of dispensaries per capita in the state. I am opposed to creating more dispensaries unless they were limited to the core program. I believe that the city should issue no more than 3 equity program permits and that they should be dispersed throughout the city so they don't impact the sales of existing dispensaries in any one area. Sacramento would not increase revenue with new dispensaries because they do not create new customers. With the waiving of the application and yearly permit renewal fees for equity clubs, it would actually cost the city money in added enforcement hours. Thank you for your time and have a great evening.
Thank you. Next speaker is Elsley Simons, Greg Vaughn, then Melissa Sanchez.
Good evening, Mayor, Mr. Mayor, and Councilman. My name is Esley Simmons Jr. I grew up in the 90s when, I have a lot of friends who were affected by, selling drugs, selling marijuana or using marijuana in a negative way. And so I'm in favor of the new enforcement. Sorry, I'm new to speaking out loud in front of people, but on the matter of storefront marijuana dispensary license, I would urge the City Council to do as follows. Number 1, expand storefront dispensary licenses from the current cap of 30, consistent with the city goals for the cannabis control regulations, which is the core program. But also 50% of storefront dispensary licenses are allocated to the core eligible participants. Number 2, allocate the pool of storefront dispensary license exclusively for core eligible participants on a first come, first served basis opportunity and not a lottery system. Number 3, ensure that the storefront dispensary license for core participants are non-transferable for a certain period of time. We believe that these licenses should not be abused and have an impact on repairing an economic dispensary created by the war on drugs. Thank you.
Next speaker is Greg Vaughn, Melissa Sanchez, then Richard Miller.
Morning, or good afternoon, Mayor, and just got off a plane, excuse me, council members. My name is Greg Vaughn. I'm a resident and small business owner in Sacramento. Been here my whole life. Grew up in the Meadowview area. I'm 916 for life. That's who I am. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and support increasing storefront cannabis dispensary licenses in Sacramento. I have a problem with the lottery program too. I remember I vote every year because I believe it's important, and that's the way I was raised. And to have 30 licenses, and I remember when it went to ballot, it said it wouldn't be the Good Old Boys Club. Well, basically, whatever the Good Old Boys Club is, it is. We don't have one person of color that basically has a dispensary, and to me, it's in our neighborhoods where we grew up. And we're taking out of those neighborhoods, but we're really not putting anything back into them. And I have a problem with that. I could have stayed in La Jolla, but I come home to make a difference, and it's important to me that if we're gonna have these things, we can't just put them in these areas. We have to be able to upgrade these areas and provide people of color hope and opportunity to prosper through it, because now as society looks at it, quote unquote, marijuana is not a bad thing anymore. I work extensively with underprivileged youth in Sacramento. I have been a pending application for a delivery permit in Sacramento. And I see the red light blinking. Like I said, I'm 916 for life. I just think we need to do what's right. And to me, the guys that benefited didn't have to go through what we have to go through, and I just hope you guys do what's right. And I think we need to increase the number of permits. They had medical, then they have recreational, it's time for somebody else to put it back into our community.
Mr. Vaughn.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Melissa Sanchez, Richard Miller, and our final speaker is Michael Hawkins.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and City Council and Office of Cannabis Policy. My name is Melissa Sanchez. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of increasing the number of storefront cannabis dispensaries here in our great city of Sacramento. I'm the founder and principal attorney at the Harvest Law Group, which is based here in Sacramento. We have helped hundreds of cannabis operators transition to the regulated market and comply with state and local laws. We also regularly advise cities and counties, as well as the state of California, on Prop 64 implementation and licensing. Currently, the city of Sacramento has one dispensary for about every 17,000 residents. As a comparison, as you saw on Mr. Devlin's slide, the city of Denver, Colorado has 364 licensed dispensaries for a population of more than 700,000. We support increasing the current limit by as many as 5 additional dispensaries and a minimum of 3, with priority for equity, women, and minority applicants. This will provide greater access to patients and adults and increase diversity of ownership in Sacramento's cannabis industry. In my experience working with cannabis businesses throughout the country, I can attest to the severe lack of representation of women and minorities in the cannabis industry. Unless we act intentionally to lift up women and minority entrepreneurs now, Sacramento's market will have to play catch up for years to come, just as other industries are doing now. Here are some facts. Less than a quarter of the industry is made up of women. Less than 17% of people of color serve in executive positions in the cannabis industry. Only 5% of women of color serve in executive positions or owners in cannabis businesses. I am very hopeful about the council's conversation that you're about to have today around this topic and urge you to increase cannabis storefront licensing for equity applicants, women, and people of color, and also to discuss this lottery system, which I think there's probably a better way to handle a potential increase in the number of licenses. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to continuing this conversation.
Thank you, Melissa.
Richard Miller, and then the final speaker is Michael Hawkins.
Good evening, Council. Rich Miller. I've been before you several times. I've been part of the implementation of the ordinance here and working with the City Council since the inception back in 2009. Prior to the ordinance, there were a number of individuals that tried to get regulated, myself one, by hiring an attorney to work with the city to try to get a dispensary permit. I was one of those people that was left out with about a half dozen other individuals that wanted to do it the right way and go through the regulated system. But we were shut down, and those people that were already open were allowed to be grandfathered in. I think in all fairness, we need to open the doors up. I do think we need a number of dispensaries, and the collective model will die as of January 9th, so SB 420 will be gone, and we will need more cannabis facilities to facilitate the patient's needs. I'm asking you not only to open this up to the equity program, but to open it up for a compassion program, as well as giving an opportunity to those individuals that tried to do it the first time around that have worked with this city for a number of years. I thank you for your time and your hard work, because I know this has not been easy during this whole entire process. But we have seen that here in Sacramento that we have implemented a model dispensary system, and I think with counties like Placer County that do not have those dispensaries, we are finding more patients coming down the mountain to get their medicine or their cannabis in this facility, and I think we could warrant it by opening at least 10 more up, making it available for not only compassion equity programs, but those people that got left out the first time around. I thank you for your time.
Michael Hawkins is our final speaker on this item.
Good evening, Mayor, members. Michael Hawkins. I'm a registered lobbyist with the City of Sacramento. I'm here on behalf of All About Wellness dispensary here in Sacramento at 19th and S Street. They have I think a lot of you have probably met Phil and Debbie Blurton. They're one of the first dispensaries that were opened here in Sacramento. They have a couple concerns. One is you have authorized 50 delivery dispensaries in one district, in Eric Guerra's district, Councilman Guerra's district. and apparently there's about 20 or 25 more in the rest of the city. It's a misnomer to say that they're delivery. They're actually mobile dispensaries, and you have no idea how many of those are going to start, and what the effect is going to be. The concern is it will dilute the existing market of dispensaries. They are not opposed to you increasing the number at a certain time, but think that the market's very fragile now. There's going to be legislation in the Capitol about where you can deliver to, and a lot of those delivery-only dispensaries are aiming for Placer and Nevada counties, which do not allow any at all. And then you have dispensaries that have opened in Marysville, Dixon, Nevada City, 5 in Davis, and those areas, a lot of the people used to come to All About Wellness. So they're going to be in a situation where they have a shrinking market surrounding the area and more coming in. I would suggest that you go take a look at weed maps and see that there's over 200 delivery services illegally operating in the city currently. And I would do enforcement actions there and attempt to control that market, and then have this discussion when you have some evidence-based information where you can make those decisions. Thank you very much for considering my comments.
Thank you, Michael. All right, that's the public testimony. Let's bring it back to the members. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. This was a very interesting question for a variety of reasons. Joe, can you put the slide back up of the population breakdown? So what I was really fascinated with is there is a great variety if you look at the population per dispensary. But when you look at the lower end of the population ratio, we're actually doing fairly well. Santa Cruz is a very happy place at the moment. And then you look at places like Denver and Portland, which in their states may be one of the few places where it's probably truly embraced. I look at, as our comparables, San Francisco, San Diego, Seattle, and we seem to fall right in the mean of those places. You know, you see, I'm sorry, San Diego wasn't one. San Francisco, those 16,000, roughly about the same as us. You see Long Beach, that's what I was thinking of. A little bit below us, and then Seattle a little bit above us. It seems to say that there's sort of a wide variety, but we've kind of struck the middle ground. And I think that's probably true for a variety of reasons. One is we grandfathered in the existing storefronts because they had CUPs and everything else, so that was sort of, we came out of the gate very strong. But I also know how hard it is to get approved in a council district for a spot that meets all the requirements. I also know that we've added significant regulatory barriers and cost burdens on each dispensary. And I thought Michael Hawkins' points were very important. One is just the amount of investment it takes to even get up and running, and how long it might take to recoup that, the costs, fees of everything to be compliant, and then the fact that the illegal market isn't paying any of those, and the potency, the efficacy, all of those things that are required to make sure that the product is safe and healthy, they sort of get to evade all of that. And I think that's a pretty substantial concern. The other concern, though, is just it's sort of like Montgomery and Ward and Sears started as mail order and then moved into brick and mortar. And now Amazon has killed at least Sears. Montgomery Ward is long dead. And it seems like the delivery part of this, as we get Postmates and obviously Amazon Prime, to continue that example, people don't want to go places. They want to have things brought to them. And so I think that to further burden the retail storefront with additional licenses without really knowing how the delivery services will affect them, I think could cause the collapse of the retail market in the storefront locations. And I don't know what to think about that. you know, this conversation isn't an action item. If it were, I don't know what I would do tonight. I think it's good, Mayor, that we can bring this back to Long Ledge and continue this debate. We've taxed this very highly. We've got our 1%. We're doing all sorts of things, and I don't think we know yet how that's functioning. We don't even have a year of data. So what I would offer is, if I got to advise the council and give free advice, which is probably what this is, I think we need to wait at least 6 to 12 months before we add licenses. I like the idea of a lottery that prefers the core program graduates to begin to diversify. I think that there is an opportunity to continue to expand. My district wasn't in the top 2, but it was number 3. And if those dispensaries move in, mine will be number 2 or maybe number 1 if we're truly popular. But I noticed there are districts that have 0. And so how do we make sure that licenses are in places that currently have none? What does that mean for the delivery services? I just don't know what's the right thing for us if we want to maintain a highly regulated market that continues to produce access for the community, but also can sustain the revenues that we've asked them to do. And that balance is a really hard place to strike accurately. And I think we're going to have to work through it. Malachi, you make awesome points as always. The core program's not even up and running, so I think we have a little bit of time to work through some of this, but that's kind of where I land. I don't want to further compromise the market. I think the Blurtons and North Star, they've been great members of the community, and our storefront dispensaries are expected to be the beacon of the industry. They have to perform well, they have to be good neighbors, and those are burdens that the delivery companies just frankly don't have. And I have to truly try to understand what that means for expanding this 30 to something greater, whatever it is. So I'm glad we have more time. I just am not ready to add dispensaries right now.
And again, I think you point out that maybe this process with Councilmember Carr is sort of led and suggested, where we discuss these important items for the council without making a final decision, gives us a chance to give some direction to the staff and to refer this appropriately to Law and Ledge for consideration in the right time. Councilman Carr.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. A couple of process questions first. This was submitted as a discussion item, but the policy consideration is, should the council wish to move forward on this issue, that we would refer it to Law and Ledge. Now, do we need a motion to do that?
Yes. That is, I think, what you were trying to say, which
Absolutely.
is give direction, right?
Absolutely. And the direction is always in the form of a motion.
It is a motion.
So before I move, though, you had a process chart up first, Joe, about how the licenses would be given out. Could you go back to your process chart?
This is a very simple.
I understand the chart. Who came up with this?
Well, I would have to actually go back and research how we ended up at a lottery, as a lottery process.
That we approved as a council?
It has been, and this is certainly subject to change by the council as well.
Okay. Well, I move that we forward this to Law and Ledge for development, and that it come back to the council with options, with the benefits and the risk of the options of expanding the storefront dispensaries. And the outcome that I'm looking for, and I imagine every council member has a different outcome, the outcome that I'm looking for is expanding the pool of people who own dispensaries, and to make sure that equity participants have an opportunity to own a dispensary. But I think we ought to come back with options, with benefits and costs, and let the council decide which option we should go with, if any at all, before we move forward and develop a whole ordinance. So I know it's going to take a lot of time, but you can do it any way you want to do it. And I know during that process you will have public hearings and people will come and give you their thoughts. I'm not really concerned about the number of dispensaries as much. I don't have a number in mind, but we don't cap the number of car dealerships in Sacramento. We don't cap the number of liquor stores. We don't cap the number of hardly anything. But we do say where they can be located. We do require a conditional use permit. So if we get a glut of dispensaries, if you decide to do 50 and the council approve 50 and some go out of business, that's how the economy works. Those who provide the best service at the cheapest cost will stay in business. And those who don't will go out of business, and that's what we want to see. So I move that we forward this to Law and Ledge for development and that we come back expeditiously.
I'll second that motion.
Moved and seconded. Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Guerra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a little bit different thought on this. Joe, could you go back to the, I think we're going to keep you up there for a while. Can you go back to the slide that shows the number of dispensaries per district? And see, when I started on the council, number 6, District 6 had 10 in there. And slowly some of them seem to be moving towards Mr. Hanson District from District 2 as well. But my concern here immediately is any expansion to the current cap on dispensaries with the current spacing and zoning restrictions lead them into only 2 districts, District 2 and District 6. And there may be some new areas in the new Panhandle annexation in District 1 that they could possibly fit in. But the reality is, you know, they would all end up in District 2 or in District 6 unless there were spaces there. Now, the dispensaries that are on this list were processed at a time when we didn't have these restrictions. Is that correct, Joe?
Right. So if you, it was really, again, it was really a self-selected group. They started opening and operating dispensaries without any sort of approval of permit, and then the council in 2009 said, you know, literally don't move, and began adopting a regulatory framework after kind of the known existence of the dispensaries.
Now, some of those dispensaries, if they were to apply today, wouldn't get a permit. They also, to their credit, have had great relationships with their neighbors, and I think that's been a positive thing. But again, I think to me the concern is the current standard of where they would end up and how many they would end up. So that's one issue. The second issue is we put in place a moratorium, at least in my council district, on the number of non-storefront dispensaries. Because the number was growing pretty quickly, and we tried to figure out, okay, let's take a step back here to find out how this system, how the whole system would pan out. So those aren't even completely in place. Some of them have applied and we've honored their application. They've paid their fee, and we wanted to provide some level of fairness and said, okay, let's figure that out. And we've got a year before we kind of see how that experience goes. So at that point, you know, I think we should definitely look at how those play out in conjunction with their current storefront dispensaries. I don't disagree with the issue of, you know, the market system and how it works. You know, the cheapest, most responsive business will respond to their clients. But that's maybe my fear, because I feel like what will happen in this competition era, it'll be a race to the bottom where security, where cleanliness, where making sure that their properties are maintained, their commitments to the community are diminished because competition gets fierce, ends up with why we created restrictions on Broadway and Stockton Boulevard to add more liquor stores, check cashing stores, towing yards, because of their retail nature. And I would hate to see that by opening Pandora's box on this, we get more of that. So I think that's one concern. Now, I want to acknowledge, particularly Miss Sanchez's remarks about equity, and I know she's been a longtime advocate, of encouraging more women and people of color, and she's advocated for, I know, a lot of the Latino community to engage and get an access in early part of the business. And to her credit, I think she's kind of created a movement of, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Women in Cannabis, or an association or something like that. And I think that's great that she's moving in that great effort. And so I want to acknowledge that work there. But even that point, even if we do get them, I think the nature of what that could do to, if we rush too quickly, could spell doom to that industry and also the communities where they end up at. So that's I think my big concern. So, I mean, I could see maybe the council supporting an RFP process to get the most competitive. I think the lottery system it might I don't know who you would be able to. I mean, if you're going to get the best candidates in those areas, limiting it to the core program may be an item. But I guess in this whole situation, I would likely not support in today expanding that cap. If this council chooses to pass the motion to refer this item to Law and Ledge, then I'll work with my colleagues on Law and Ledge to craft the best policy. But at this point, I don't support the expanding of the cap unless we, and I could maybe look at it in a year when the moratorium is lifted and we see how the non-storefront dispensaries are working. But so in this case, I would vote no on this item. But if it's the will of the council, I'll work with my colleagues on Law and Ledge to find out what a good solution would be. But I encourage my colleagues not to vote to support the item just because I think they'll end up in District 2 and District 6.
So you're no tonight on no tonight. Okay. Okay, I'm just trying to clarify what the yes, Councilman Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with many of the comments of Council Members Hansen and Guerra. I think we need to make this a data-driven decision and that we don't have the data we need, certainly about delivery-only dispensaries and how they will affect the market. There are a bunch of unknowns here. At the same time, I get the equity issue. If we did approve more dispensaries, I would want to create balance in terms of geographical location. I'm not certain that we can do that legally, to tell you the truth, but if there are 0 dispensaries in District 1, 7, and 8, it would make sense to encourage businesses in those locales rather than overburden Districts 2 and 6. This has been problematic right down the pike, and we keep wrestling with it piecemeal at law and legislation. I tend to agree with Councilmember Guerra that although this is an idea we should consider, that the timing isn't quite right at this particular junction. And I'm happy to engage in this conversation at Law and Ledge, but I think it's premature. So I think we should take this up after we have licensed more delivery-only dispensaries and understand how they affect the market.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really shocked by some of the comments I'm hearing from my colleagues relative to this issue. In fact, I feel that it's shameful to suggest that because minority applicants want an opportunity for dispensaries, they need to continue to wait. And yet we continue to put cultivation buildings in these communities that are disproportionately impacting minority communities. And we still, after 2.5 years, do not have a nexus study to tell us what the impacts are. And I'm hearing different things about the nexus study, and yet I'm getting comments and emails and texts from people in my community about the impacts. And so the fact that we will not, as a council, unify and even allow this to go to Law and Ledge to come back with the data, to me suggests something very different than what the real issues are. It's about equity, but it's also the continuing to disrespect people of color in this community, in this industry, despite what we say. And so I will strongly support Councilman Carr, Councilman Jennings, and I thank you guys for taking the leadership in this. And I think if this council is about equity, then they need to show it in a real way and stop giving lip service to people about what they care about, and their actions show something completely different. So I'm actually highly upset by some of the comments that I've heard, and I hope this council will vote to allow Law and Ledge to come back with the findings that will help justify this opportunity for people in this new industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Carr.
There are just two things I wanted to address. One, the geographic the placement of the dispensaries and the overconcentration. I think I have certainly agreed, and I think the rest of the council members have agreed, that we would not force a cannabis activity of any type in any district unless that item could be called up and that member given a chance to make the plea to the rest of the council that this doesn't belong here. And they can make that plea on any basis, on the security, on the concentration, on whatever basis they needed to try to convince us. So the argument that we might have too many dispensaries in any district, if there are 10 or 15 there now and another one is proposed, that council member can come back and say, I have an overconcentration, don't vote to put this in. We have a conditional use process to address that. So I'm not really convinced by that argument, that this overconcentration. And Mayor, I tell you, I have a problem now, because 1, 2, 3 members of the Law and Ledge Committee have come out opposing this. Maybe Law and Ledge is not the right place to send this.
Well, so, not to digress too much, but I want to see if I can help out here a little bit. Councilman Carr, your intention is right on in asking the council to sort of pre-vet proposals so that staff, and your motivation, you've been clear about this, is that staff doesn't get caught up in having to spend excessive amount of time on things where there may not be a lot of support on the council. But there's another side to this, and this isn't critical of the approach, but it's just my observation. If Larry Carr, as one member, has a legislative idea, he ought to have the right to have it heard through through our committee process, end of story. I don't think you need the permission of the city council, frankly, to have this referred to Law and Ledge. I know what your intent is, and it's a good intent. You want to protect the staff from having to do one-offs from city council members, right on. But you're seeing sort of the unintended consequence of having this pre-vetting. As far as I'm concerned, any member of this council has a legislative or ordinance idea, you get to have it heard. End of story. Before a proper committee. You may not get a second on your or a motion or a second, but you have the right to have it heard. And I'm sorry, that's the way it is in the legislature. Every member gets to introduce their bills, and they get them heard before a committee. And I don't think we should stop this from being heard in Law and Ledge, no matter what the pre-vote is. And by the way, yeah, you heard the comments here, but there's a long way to go. There's data. There's a lot of study and research to be done here, and a potential way to work this out. So I wouldn't be overly discouraged by what you've heard. Let's get this to Law and Ledge. I would urge you, and I respect Councilmember Guerra completely in his ultimate point of view on this, but I would urge a unanimous vote as a courtesy to colleague to refer this to the Law and Ledge Committee and to then have it out. And yes, the Constitution of the Law and Ledge Committee is what it is. It could change, by the way, after January 1 as we reappoint new members, but this should be heard by the committee, period. Because to not do so, you know, essentially says that a member's constrained from putting forward his or her best idea. So that's what I think. I think we should sort of dispense with a lot of the formality of this, frankly. If you don't want to do it by motion, I'm just going to ask by, I just think it should be heard before Lawn Ledge. Why shouldn't it?
Well, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, but he's raising a concern about the process here.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
And about how we get heard. And I think that's a discussion that we can have on another day. And it's that day for that discussion is probably coming soon. But
it's being called tonight, but okay.
Well, there's a motion on the floor.
Okay.
And the motion has been
Then let's
seconded.
keep going. Councilman Guerra.
Mayor, I accidentally hit my button when I was trying to punch up with a point of order. I was
Were you
supposed to-
next? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
go
hit
ahead.
the wrong button in
Go
my
ahead.
haste. I would just say that I am open to a conversation, but I'm not open to being railroaded into a conversation. And I think Mr. Carr has been the one who's been most adherent to policy and process. And if he wants to make a motion that we direct this to Lawn Ledge, then I think your proposal lives by the motion and dies by the motion.
Okay.
And so I disagree on your point that if we're going to debate it here and now as a committee of the whole, then this is more effective in a way than Lawn Ledge of determining the will of the council. So I wasn't prepared to vote against Mr. Carr's motion until I heard Mr. Guerra's argument, because I'm okay with the debate. But if forced to, because I spoke and I did not make a motion, but if Mr. Carr's motion is that we have to come back with options, and an option has to be expanding this, then I'm going to vote against that motion, because I don't believe that it's time to hear that item. And, you know, we sit here, all 9 of us, we have great attendance tonight, and we get to have that conversation as a whole council. Lawn Legislative Committee, if the committee votes it down, Mr. Carr, the process is it can still be brought to council. It's only a recommendation. And it can still come if there's a negative recommendation. It's true.
How can it come?
By our rules. A negative recommendation, I think it can still be called up even if the committee, I believe we've done it once before where the committee voted against something and we brought it up here. I'm just saying that, Mr. Carr, if you want to live by processes, then I encourage you to live by the process of the council voting down your motion. Now, if you don't want to live by the processes that you've insisted that we live by, then that's a different story.
Okay, let's keep going. There's a motion.
I will vote against the motion if that is the motion.
Okay. We'll clarify the motion at the end, but let's get through the members, lots of members left to speak on this issue. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I mean, I find it, you know, some of the remarks that our colleagues aren't concerned about all our constituents, you know, particularly.
Okay, one at a time. We're not going to interrupt each other, please. Councilman Guerra has the floor.
And particularly when some of us have family members who live adjacent to some of these properties. But frankly, I think it's our duty from each council member to advocate for our district and for a global policy for the city that is functioning for the entire city. And, you know, to Mr. Carr's point, again, I said, I'm just one vote. But if it ended up in Lawn Ledge, I would do my best as a member of Lawn Ledge to find a good policy. That's our role to do. But if the motion is to continue that, when I've said that, I don't think we should have this conversation until a year out, once we see how things are going. That I think is an important piece. If your motion was to, I mean, if the motion was review how our dispensaries, both storefront and non-storefront, are working, I could probably support a motion like that, but I can't support something that leads to the current expansion, where it may lead to a proliferation into the South Sac community, particularly the Southeast Sac community.
Thank you, Mayor. I hear the conversation that's going on tonight, and I don't know what the process will be as far as the inequity that's going on within our current dispensaries to make a wrong a right if we don't take it forward to the law and ledge. I don't know what other process we have. So the only process I know that we have on this council is for this to go to law and ledge, and I have confidence that those who are on law and ledge will keep an open mind, will take a look at the data, and have the opportunity to come back for a full conversation in front of the full council. I have confidence in that. What concerns me is there is an inequity that exists in where we are right now. And if we don't address it in law and ledge, it won't be addressed and it's business as usual. So all of us should be at the table that says, let's take it through the process, let's keep an open mind, let's craft new policy, as Councilmember Garrett says, and let's figure out where we go from here when we come back and have the full conversation. There needs to be more data than we have tonight. This needs to be a data-driven decision, as was said by one of the participants who spoke earlier today. We need to make sure that we look at all the opportunity, whether it's an RFP process, the current process that we have, or whatever we want. We need to look at all of that. And so I have full confidence that if we make the right decision to take something that is wrong, that is affecting a population of people, and we take it through the process, I have full confidence that we will craft a new policy that will change that. I have confidence in this council.
Very good. Thank you. I have a suggestion, but I'll turn it to, you want me to try? So, Councilmember Carr, I'm prepared to support your motion as is, but I wonder if you might amend the motion in the following way. To refer the matter to law and ledge for the purposes of coming up with a policy to decrease the inequities and increase the diversity of dispensary ownership in Sacramento. In other words, the motion wouldn't refer to the number or seek to, it could contemplate increasing the number. That isn't off the table. But the motion itself isn't about the number, it's instead about the core that Councilman Warren is upset about, and that we're all committed to, and that is to decrease the inequities and increase the diversity of dispensary ownership. If you amended the motion in that way, I think you would get a unanimous. You'd have law and ledge take up the broad issue, which could include increasing the number of permits, but without directing that as the sole or as the lead method to try to achieve the end. Sure. Think about it a second. Councilman Chenier?
Thank you, Mayor. While you're thinking about it. A couple things. Mayor, I think it's a very good idea. There's two pieces going on here. One is kind of generally, and I've heard from a lot of dispensaries and people who want to own dispensaries. So there's two things. One is just increasing the number, and is that a good thing to do or not? And I would say on that, on its own, is probably not. And I will tell you why. And I've said for the last probably 3 to 4 months is I still think we need to let the landscape settle to see where we are. We have, I don't know, Joe, what do we got? Still 162 permits in process or 200 permits in process. We've got over 70 delivery permits in process. Mr. Harris was correct. We should make a data-driven decision, but we don't have the data yet on that. So for me, on its face, just looking at the number of dispensaries, I would say it's not time to do that because we don't know what impact it will be. And particularly for dispensaries with what we've done, what the state has done, it's a completely different market than they were operating in a year ago because of all the changes. And so, you know, we have a healthy industry. I want to keep it healthy. So on that face. However, on the equity front, you're right. We don't have equity in the dispensaries, and it's something we should try to remedy. And whether that's looking at current operators that are underperforming, whether it's adding new dispensaries, getting rid of the lottery process, making it part of core, I think those are all things that we can try to figure out with the goal of increasing equity in the dispensary part of the industry. And that is something I think we should do. I don't know exactly what that looks like, and I would very much be appreciative of you taking what the mayor has suggested, because it gives us a lot more flexibility in how we have this discussion. And you know, there's a part of me that says, don't, you know, send it somewhere else so we don't have to deal with it. But I think it's the right thing to do, and I'm happy to do that.
As long as the intent of the motion is to not take off the table the potential of increase.
Yeah,
but
I think looking at it, and this is what Larry Carr would say, right, is let's look at the goal here. If the goal is explicitly to increase equity in that part of the industry, I'm all for it. And so give us that opportunity. I don't think any of the members of Law and Ledge would oppose doing that and trying to come up with some good ideas about how to do that. That may also rely on or include what's the timing of doing something so that we can see more data. So, you know, if you're willing to live with that, I'm very much in favor of doing this and happy to take it to Law and Ledge and have the conversation, assuming I count to 4 with me if there's a 5th.
I am willing to accept the mayor's amended motion, provided the second is, especially since you're the 5th vote, Jay.
Yep. Maybe, I don't know.
I think you get 9 on this one.
I have, okay, so a couple of other things I'd like to say just on it, and Mr. Devlin and I have talked a little bit about this. Malachi, I'm really happy about your third point of non-transferable licenses, because I know that there's been some real interesting things that have come up in Oakland where people have gotten licenses and immediately sold them or become a silent partner, which has not increased equity, it's just increased a few pocketbooks. So I want to make sure anything we do like that, we have to think through what the process would be, and we can go back and change the lottery system and figure it out. So I think that's good. Joe, I'd love to see and get a really good understanding of where we are on the clawbacks of folks who are not doing the right thing or underperforming. And my understanding is out of the 30 dispensaries we probably have about 6 or so that are underperforming. So what options, and for our city attorney, this is something that's in your bailiwick as well, what options do we have to get those licenses back? Because that may take care of a piece of this challenge. I don't know. I'd also, along those lines, if we, you know, and again, I think this is the city attorney has to weigh in on this, if we want to ensure that new licenses go to the population that we looked at in core around equity, how do we ensure that that happens? So what are the pieces of the puzzle that we would have to go through on that? And then the other thing that I'd like to see is, and I know we haven't collected this information, but I think we need to start collecting information about the demographics of those people with licenses. And we don't know, for example, if we have 70 delivery licenses in process somewhere, 50 for Eric, 20 for the rest of us, who are those folks? And so if we can go back and do some surveying, I don't think we can do it. It can't be mandatory, but if we can voluntarily ask people to identify themselves out of those 70, which I think is the lowest barrier to entry in this market, we can see where we are on that. So I think those pieces of information will help us in the discussion with this. So Larry, I appreciate you being flexible on this, and I would be an aye vote on that matter.
Okay. We now have an amended motion and a second. Mr. Jennings? Are you still thinking about it?
No, I'm good.
He's a second. Okay, then there's an amended motion on the floor. Councilman Harris.
Thanks again, Mayor. You know, Larry, when you first brought this idea to the front, it was not at all clear to me if equity was what you're driving at or just increasing market opportunities. Not clear. When you made a statement that 3 of the members of Law and Ledge were ostensibly opposing it, that wasn't correct either. I stated that I was happy to hear this at Law and Ledge. And just as you should not presume what my conclusion might be at Law and Ledge, neither should you try to pre-assume an outcome in terms of what the Law and Ledge should bring forward. I mean, if we're going to discuss equity issue, that's great. Then push that to Law and Ledge. If you want to talk about market opportunities, that's fine. You want to talk about possibility of increasing the number of dispensaries, all that's fair and good, but what the Law and Legislation Committee comes up with, I believe, should be data-driven and should take into, should encompass everything that Jay Chenier just talked about. So it really was that ambiguous that it was really not clear where you wanted to go with it. That being said, what you've done here to have a pre-discussion about an issue is a policy matter that you and I have discussed at length, and I really appreciate you doing that. So I'm assuming now with your amended motion that equity is what you're trying to drive at. Is that a fair statement?
That's the motion.
Exactly what the motion is.
So, so fair enough. So we finally got clarity through discussion at council, and I think the process is fantastic.
I'm having a fantastic time.
You look like you're in your element.
Councilman Warren.
Mr. Mayor, thank you again. First of all, Jeff, I want to thank you for your comment, because I think it did presuppose some things based on comments, and I think I had come to the same conclusion erroneously about what might happen. However, I'm still extremely concerned about some of the comments I heard, and particularly as it relates to, you know, District 2 has been impacted by this marijuana industry disproportionately, particularly as it relates to cultivation, both legal and illegal. I've always stated that I was open to retail operation in dispensaries in District 2 in retail corridors. So in my district, they would not be limited to industrial like I've stated for cultivation. I believe that retail corridors should have retail businesses and not businesses that are boarded, windows blacked out, doors locked, and you have a sea of blank canvas in a retail corridor that's heavily trafficked. So for retail operations, there would be additional opportunity in District 2 for, if we are so granted new applicants in District 2, I'm all for that. So, and I recognize that this is a new position for this council. In the event that we are successful at inclusion and opportunities for diversity, this is new. The council has not done that. We have a program that took 2 years or 3 years or 4 years to come together. In my opinion, is still underfunded. I hope that there's at least one business that comes through that program that's a success. Still underfunded, and I think we do our community a disservice when we do not provide opportunity for all of our residents to participate. And so I am happy to receive application for retail dispensaries in District 2, and I will be elated if some of those applicants are minorities and people who have been locked out of the system. And so, again, I'm going to support Councilman Carr. He's happy with the mayor and the good work that he did to help amend the motion. So Mr. Carr accepted, Mr. Jennings accepted, I too will accept it, but I completely expect to have more opportunity for people that have been locked out of the system to participate. And I would hope that Law and Ledge would help through data that they come up with to provide a mechanism for this city, for this council to execute. And it is beyond me how we can limit dispensaries, and yet we're just cultivation and delivery, we're just approving applications left and right. And we don't have the vehicle that we should have to determine the impacts. The Nexus study, again, I remind people that this Nexus study has not come back to us in over 3 years. And yet we're approving businesses that will have some impact in where your relatives live, where mine live, where I live, where all of our residents live. And yet we still don't know, and yet we can put this artificial cap. You know, it's creating a monopoly. It's a council-driven monopoly in this industry. and I think we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilmember Ashby.
I punched up and punched out about 6 times because I was trying to figure out, I want to hear one more set of comments. In a surprise to no one, I hate marijuana, right? I voted against it every time we've ever taken it up on anything. I don't see a big benefit to marijuana in the community. So I personally, for me, every time marijuana's on our agenda, I cringe because I don't like it. I don't think the impacts are good. And I've been pretty clear about that. So I felt really confident coming into tonight that it would be like an 8-to-1 vote, like it often is with marijuana, and I would just be by myself.
I voted against the ordinance too.
Yeah, you did. You and Jeff both voted against the ordinance originally.
So it was 6-3.
And, the original one, yeah. Things that make me nervous when people say things like every council district should have dispensaries. That doesn't make me want to support the motion moving forward and add more dispensaries because my district's been really vocal about not wanting them. Where there are others, one of the reasons that this has moved forward is because people like Jay and Eric and Alan at various times said they would entertain that to a limit or to a number. And so I think what Councilmember Carr said tonight that's really important to me is that this council has agreed that any council member that wants to question or wants to call up the item can do so for any reason. It could be over concentration, it can be I just don't want this one, and that the council would honor that with each other, or at least hear it out. And that's a message to the industry that would be a tough hurdle to overcome. Anything that changes that makes me very nervous because I want each council member, whether it's us or the people that follow us, to be able to gauge their district and know maybe some districts are going to be good for delivery, maybe some are going to be good for processing or better for dispensary than not dispensary. And I just think that needs to be honored. I'm so conflicted tonight because I don't like marijuana so much and I just want to vote against any concept that there would be more. However, I also really want to support Larry and Alan because I see what they're trying to do. Spent most of my time on this council fighting equity battles, usually around gender. And the numbers that you rattled off about women are reflective of every single industry there is, including politics. Look up here. There's one of me, right? 1 out of 9, not good odds, right? And that's true across our whole country, in every industry. It's not just this one. So anything that we can do to help right those inequities should at least be discussed and considered. It has, baffled me from the beginning of this discussion, and I told Malachi this. I'd never understood how we expected to get to equity when we grandfathered in 30 entities that were already there. I said that the first day, you probably remember that it was an unreasonable, those two things don't match up. And now we're in this position, and what I don't want to do is add 30 dispensaries so that we make it 60, and then we have equity. I don't want to do that because I don't want 60 dispensaries. I do want equity. And the two are just not, they're just not measuring up. And so in my mind, I think that leads me to a place where it needs more discussion. It will be very unlikely that I would vote to increase the number of dispensaries because I just don't think our city needs them. When I look at that map that Joe brought forward and I look at those cities, I can't remember, I think Steve said it, and he's 100% right. I'm from Oregon. There's really only one big city in Oregon. So the fact that Portland has so many, or Seattle or Denver has so many, that's not California. That does not compare. And we would never use those cities for comparables for any other purpose. They're structured completely different than us. Their role in their city, in their state is very different from us. And Sacramento is far more like Long Beach or those cities, and I would agree that we were right in the margin. And so I didn't quite read that list the same way that some other folks did. I would agree with Steve you know, and I feel for Eric because he's over there trying to fight for his district, and he's had a lot of frustration from a district that's concerned about what these impacts are. And just so you know, I mean, the number one problem here is that we don't have the nexus study. That's the number one problem, is that Alan asked from day one for us to have this nexus study so that we would be able to tell what the impacts are and how we could compensate communities for those impacts. We do this in many ways. When we put in digital billboards, we look at the nexus for sound and light, all of those things. When we build a community, we look at air quality. We haven't done any of that type of work for the nexus of moving these industries into these communities. And it's frustrating to not have that information to work with. So another part of me thinks if we boot this back to Law and Ledge, maybe we'll get some of that nexus study done. Maybe we'll get some of that information to come forward too, if there's an opportunity for that committee to at least bring components of that forward. I understand why we can't have the whole thing, but maybe some pieces of it that could help inform this discussion. I am inclined to support Larry and Alan on this, but with a strong caution to the group that additional dispensaries is definitely not on my radar. So if you all can come up with some options, alternatives, for how we achieve equity without adding or doubling our dispensary population. For example, the distribution or the delivery component that I know is still in process. How do we put core at the front of the line for that? How do we do some things with some of the entities that are already out there? How, as these dispensaries come offline and are replaced, like we have done with card rooms, we do restrictions sometimes. Jay and I have dealt with card rooms over the years too. Those licenses come out, you're able to get other people in and move them in other areas. So I'd like to just see some creativity come back to us to give us some options for achieving equity goals without increasing large numbers and without putting undue pressure on districts or council members moving forward, sticking within these same guidelines that we kind of already have now about honoring council members wanting to call things up for whatever reason they have to call them up. Is that fair?
Yep.
All right.
Very good. Good direction. Councilman Guerra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As always, your art of negotiation precedes itself.
Thank you.
And I think the power of one's vote and at least position helps drive that conversation. And I think, again, to my point, to my colleague Larry Carr here, who had mentioned, his outcome. I mean, if the question is, if the motion now is how do we address the equity issue in the market, that is something that I've always championed.
Doesn't preclude the possibility of increasing the number of permits.
And for one, if in the process it leads to a multiple expansion of more dispensaries in my district, I would be concerned again. But I always will give every item that comes to me, both on this dais at the council or in committee, a fair and hearing with the data. And again, that was my concern with immediately going to lifting the cap. And so that I think is a big difference. But I think to a lot of the credit with my neighbors who've been active on this, actual residents who've told me, and I'll quote Ms. Kennedy, who says, I'm not, Councilman, I'm not saying no, just not all in my neighborhood, and I think when I got on the council, we also had card rooms and enough card rooms. We also came in with the most dispensaries. We also had both legal cultivation and some that were, quote unquote, registered themselves for the process, who were doing it, I guess, the right way, even though there was no process. And now we've gone through and eliminated a lot of the illegal grow houses, done enforcement, set some caps on the cultivation. We've done good work in the Law and Legislation Committee about figuring out how to move this process forward, creating a regulatory process for delivery, for transportation, for cultivation. The fact is, Prop 64, which, I wish the voters hadn't have passed, because I don't think the state or localities were ready, but that's the case. The voters have spoken and moved that forward. I think we've done a good job of using moderation and looking at how we make this process forward. So if the motion is how do we address equity in the dispensary industry, then I can support that motion, because that'll lead
That is the motion. Okay, I want to see if we can wrap this up, please. Vice Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor. I too said in my initial comments, I think that there's a time to look at this. I wanted to thank Councilmember Ashby, because I think your comments were very forthright and honest. And when I look at this chart, I see 3 council districts that have no dispensaries. And I can't help but think that this conversation at Law and Ledge, and as it comes back to us at some point, will focus on that, at least from my standpoint. And whether we cap or change how we do the mobile permits or look at other parts of this economy, I think that one of the key things that I'm going to advance in the Law and Legislation Committee is that this is unfair, that 5 districts, really 4 districts, bear most of the burden. And so we talk about inequities, and I think how we address inequities is important. But geographically, certain parts of the city, it's okay to have dispensaries, and clearly in certain parts it's not. And I think that's sort of a choice. But I also, too, reject the idea that the call-up is the right way to deal with this, because by the time you're at the council, you've invested so much time and energy to go through the process that it's, in my opinion, fundamentally unfair at that last minute, after telling the market that these are places they can go, to say here at this dais, in the ultimate exercise of our power, that no, because of our prerogative, we're going to tell you all this time and energy you spend is for naught. And I think that is a fairness issue that we'll debate later. I'll support the motion, Mayor. I think there's a lot of economic challenges here, but there are logistical opportunities to address the question of fairness and equity that I think we can get at. But if it's, certain districts have to take more and some districts will have none, I think that is fundamentally unfair.
Okay. Rick, briefly.
I encourage the Law and Ledge Committee to take a look at the districts that don't have them as well as the districts that do, and for it to be an equity conversation as a part of the conversation that comes back to the whole council, so we can have that conversation. I think I would also encourage Law and Ledge to listen to the business owners as to why they have only gone to certain districts as opposed to other districts. And I think it will be very informative as to why they are not in certain districts and why they are in other districts. So that information will come back to us. And I'm also hoping that during this time of conversation, that we can put an end to this conversation about where is the nexus study. I'm hoping very clearly that when Law and Ledge comes back to us, they'll come back with a definitive date as to when we will get the nexus study, so we can have a conversation about the true impact that all of us keep talking about. And so I'm not putting that as a part of the motion, but I'm putting that as direction. And if I can't get the direction by the time Law and Ledge comes by, then I'll make sure that it gets on the agenda for us to have a full conversation.
Thank you, sir. Before I give Councilman Carr the last word, I just want to put a question on the table for Law and Ledge as you consider this policy. These are just things that have been on my mind as I've been listening to this. Do more legal dispensaries create the real possibility of driving out the illegal dispensaries? Is that, if we talk about the market, I'd just like you, as you analyze this policy with staff, to at least consider that. And then finally, and again, give Larry the last word here. This was a interesting and in a way hard discussion, but what came out of it is unanimity around a core principle of this city council in this city, which is that we are fiercely committed to reducing inequities. We are committed to inclusive economic development. Well, I understand, but this is, we are committed to neighborhood revitalization. We just finished a political campaign where that was front and center. And this is all part of it. So, you know, we've been arguing about the means to the end here, which is fine. But we are all absolutely committed to that, and that'll be reflected in what I hope will be a 9-0 vote in 60 seconds. Councilman Carr?
Maybe even less than that. Sorry?
Well, there's illegal, if we don't have illegal dispensaries, Jay pointed out, the underground delivery system. Go ahead.
First of all, a question for Law and Ledge. When could we expect to see this back? Before the next study?
About it. Well, we have our agendas, and Consuelo's not here. Our agendas are pretty much booked through the end of the year. We have 2 more meetings, I believe. So let us sit down. There's a number of pieces of information that I think we need so that we can move forward, and I think we're also going to want to have 1 or 2 stakeholder meetings on this as well, because we want to reach out to the industry. So let me kind of map that out with Consuelo and with Joe, and we'll get back to you.
Good. And Joe, I don't have any dispensary, so I've never received an application. But are we following a process where once an application is submitted, that you're sending that to the city council member that
There's no dispensary applications because we're not
concerned?
There's a renewal application. The applications that that council members may get are either in the event of the routing sheet of a conditional use permit application, or essentially a routing sheet that would come through my office for a business that doesn't need a conditional use permit, such as a testing facility or a manufacturing facility.
If someone wants to put a dispensary in my district, am I notified when they submit an application to do that?
You would be notified through the conditional use permit process, yes.
So the first time that I saw that application wouldn't be when I brought it to city council, or not?
No, depending on its particular geography and distance from certain sensitive uses, it's either a zoning administrator approval or a planning commission approval. So once the application is submitted to the community development department, that application would be routed to your office.
So first of all, I can't tell you how much I appreciated this discussion. And when I joined the city council and the SMUD board, this is all I thought we would be doing, is talking about weighty issues and how to resolve them. And when someone puts something on the table that the 9 people working together would produce a better product than what was originally put on the table. And that's what happened here. And what I did presume is that the only way to get equity was by increasing the number. And it's not true. There are other ways, and Law and Ledge is going to come up with some great innovative things that I never would have thought of.
Yes, we are.
So I appreciate that. And Mr. Mayor, you've demonstrated it before, but I really see why you were elected President Pro Tem of the Senate.
Thank you.
On the fly, you can resolve very difficult issues and come up with compromises and solutions that satisfy everyone. I'm in awe.
Thank you.
I've seen you do it before many times, but I'm always awe-inspired how you were able to do that.
No problem. Just it's a pleasure and an honor, believe me, to help bring us and keep us all together. We are together. It's a family. Sometimes we fight, but ultimately we're trying to move the city forward, and this equity principle, inclusive economic development, is a core value of this city. And
you helped us produce a better product, and now we are forwarding that to Law and Ledge with the full weight of the whole council.
yes, we are. Okay, unless there's more to talk about. It's a great discussion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstain. That's 9-0. Thank you all very, very much. Appreciate it. And thank you to members of the public for your patience tonight and for your testimony. Let us now move to public, council comments, ideas, and questions. We do have some members. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. This comment is actually for staff, specifically the city manager's staff. You know, we're wrestling with homelessness in a big way, and I found that triage in my district has been enormously successful in moving us forward. Myself and the mayor are eyeing Cal Expo as a site to continue triage. It's my desire to continue triage without a gap if we possibly can. And I want to couch it this way. Looking at the fires in Paradise, nobody would hesitate for even 2 days to create emergency shelter for the victims of fire. So why is it different for the indigent who live on our streets? Is it because we're used to it? We have an economic crisis, a shelter crisis, and a mental health crisis that surrounds us every day. So my challenge to staff is this: find me a way to erect a tent in a very short period of time. You do it for fire victims. Cal Expo will rise to the occasion, and they've already said that they can house fire victims. We need to shorten the time. When you come back and say that it takes 6 months to erect a shelter to start to deal with the homeless crisis, even though we have millions of dollars in the hopper, this is very problematic for me. So I would like to continue this discussion with staff about finding ways to move past our normal system of working with facilities and architects and all of this stuff. We have declared a shelter crisis. I know what the word crisis means to me, Mr. Mayor. I think it means something similar to you. I think we need to find a way to move more expeditiously, and when the money comes in, the HEAP money from the state, we need to be ready to go. I do not want to have my constituents say, okay, you closed triage, and now we're going to wait 6 months to erect another one, even though we have millions of dollars in the hopper.
Couldn't agree with you more, by the way.
So my announcements are these. The River Park Community Tree Planting is this Saturday, November 17th from 9 to noon. We'll meet at Glen Hall Park. And then the following day, Sunday, the South Natomas Urban Greening Tree Planting will occur at Garden Valley Elementary School, which is 3601 Larchwood Drive. That's November 18th from 8:45 till noon. And lastly, in its 5th consecutive year, Global Winter Wonderland will begin opening its doors at Cal Expo on Friday, November 16th at 5 p.m. and will be open through January 6th, 2019. And please make sure you check the Air Quality Management District's website to determine if outdoor activity is going to be okay this Friday for the opening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilman Jennings.
Thank you, Mayor. 3 quick announcements. Office hours for District 7 will take place at the Robbie Waters Library tomorrow at 6 p.m. We encourage you to come on down so you don't have to come to City Hall and get your business done. We can get it done right in the community at the Robbie Waters Library tomorrow. And then on Sunday at the Crocker Art Museum, it's a free community day for everyone who lives in District 7. And that community day will start at 10 a.m. and end at 5 p.m. Activities include a museum scavenger hunt, editorial cartoon workshop led by Sacramento-based artist Milton Bowen. Lots of activities for kids and families, and it's a free event, so I encourage you to come out for that event. And then finally, I was reading in the Washington Post, this article was sent by my daughter who lives in New Jersey now, about the Advanced Peace initiative that we have implemented here in Sacramento. And there's an article, a very positive article in the Washington Post that I will send all of my colleagues so that they can read it and see what they're saying about us throughout the country.
Very good. I saw the article. It's very, very good. Councilman Carr.
Thank you, Mayor. I saw that article too. They had a nice picture of Khalid in there. I know. Where were you? This Thursday, the 15th, from 5 to 7 p.m., the City of Sacramento's Vision Zero will host a community open house at Luther Burbank High School 3500 Florin Road, to talk to community members about their experience walking and biking along the Florin Road corridor, particularly between 24th and Munson Way, and obtaining input on what kinds of traffic safety improvements they would like to see. And then on Saturday, November the 17th, Assemblymember Jim Cooper will be hosting a Thanksgiving Healthy Family Wellness Fair and Turkey Giveaway. That's going to be at from 8 a.m. to noon at Luther Burbank High School. Also, there'll be free dental kits, medical screenings, and for the family, a free frozen turkey while supplies last. And finally, Kaiser Permanente will be having a flu vaccination event on Wednesday, November the 28th from 3 to 7 at the Sam and Bonnie Pennell Community Center. Free flu shots and a chance to meet a Sacramento Kings player. I hope it's De'Aaron Fox.
Boy, is he great.
Learn about fall prevention, cancer prevention, mental health resources, and more. The event is open to Kaiser Permanente members and non-members. Keep an eye out for the flyer, because with the flyer, you will get free transit on SAC RT once you present the flyer.
Thank you, Councilman. Last but not least, Councilmember Guerra, I have one quick comment after that. Go.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to echo and reiterate the comments about the air that Councilmember Harris brought up. For those, if you want to get more information, you can always go to sparetheair.com. Our air district information is there. Particularly paying attention to the issue of particulate matters 2.5, your PM 2.5 rating is extremely harmful for young kids. So look at that rating. We always have it available for every single day at sparetheair.com. But if it's if those particulate matters can enter the bloodstreams and cause some real negative impacts to young kids. Then a couple of announcements, Mr. Mayor. This November 17th at 11 a.m., the Avondale Glen Elder Neighborhood Association is having, again, their senior luncheon, and we hope you'll join us there as we thank all the seniors in our community and talk about the history of the neighborhood. Also, save the date for December 8th at 5:30 p.m. at the Coloma Center in Elmhurst. We're going to have our annual Snow Much Fun and District 6 tree lighting. We hope you'll join us there for some pan dulce, some Mexican hot chocolate as we enjoy the holidays and have snow much fun here in Sacramento.
Snow much fun.
Snow much fun. Snow much fun, yes.
Oh, my
exactly.
God. Nice.
Yeah, you can help us with the tree lighting.
Yes.
Have a nice day.
That's right. And lastly, tomorrow, if you want to join us over at the Talig Village Center at Sacramento City Brews, we're having a fundraiser for the South Sac Robotics Elementary School programs. Help our kids get involved in STEM education and support their after-school robotics programs that we started in District 6. Thank you very much.
Excellent. A lot going on. Councilmember Ashby?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I first of all just wanted to say how much I regretted that we had to cancel the Veterans Day Parade, even though I do believe it was the right call. I still feel bad because, you know, it's such a great tradition in Sacramento that we all go out and honor the veterans with that parade, and I wish we had the opportunity to do it. I feel bad for our staff who put a lot of time and energy and effort into it, and then at the very last minute, I had to put more time and energy into calling everyone to cancel it. So I wanted to, A, thank our staff, B, tell the veterans out there how much we all appreciate them, that we regret that we had to do that. And at the same time, I want to thank our staff for making the right decision for the health and well-being of our community. And then District 1, also getting into the holiday spirit, has a craft fair, which is basically a pop-up mall. It's scheduled to be in our farmers market, but if the smoke doesn't subside, we will move it indoors. It's this Saturday from 9 to 1, and it is all local vendors. So coming out and basically just doing a pop-up mall in the farmers market where people can come shop for the holidays and pick out unique gifts and support local businesses, mostly small businesses. We'll have some of the farmers out there too. So things like caramel apples and bath products and all kinds of jewelry and fun stuff like that. So if you guys are interested in that and you want to support some of those local businesses, that's this Saturday in Natomas. supposedly at the farmer's market, but if the smoke is bad, check our website. We'll put up information about where, 9 a.m.
Thank you. Councilman Chenier.
Thank you, Mayor. Really quickly, a number of us were able to attend the appointment of Pastor Les Simmons, a senior pastor at the South Sacramento Christian Church. Is that the right name?
Yes.
South Sacramento Christian Center. It was a fascinating evening, and I just want to relay our congratulations both to Pastor Simmons and his wife Katrina for all the work that they do, which is really wonderful. But our congratulations to the entire community around the church and for all the work that they do in the city. They are great leaders, and again, we wish them congratulations and look forward to working with him in his new role.
It's great. I heard it was a wonderful event. Vice Mayor?
I'm glad you raised that, Jay. I regretted not being there for Les's installation, but I'm in the ALF program with him right now, and he's been a phenomenal person to kind of get to know unexpectedly. I mean, he just is from a different part of the city, and it's been a pleasure. I did want to say, though, because we adjourned the council in his memory a couple weeks ago, yesterday the mayor, myself, and Mr. Harris attended the funeral for Burnett Miller. And I thought I knew a lot about Burnett, but boy, that man had a lot of joy in his life. And I want to thank the mayor for the kind words that he gave on behalf of the city. Over 1,000 people, I believe, attended. There's only room for 300 in the Crocker Auditorium. And it was just a very moving ceremony. And hear about his World War II experience, liberating a concentration camp, to running for council and then being elected by his colleagues, even when he was out of office, to be mayor.
It was beautiful.
Just a phenomenal man.
A life well lived. So, last comment, that we do have one speaker, public testimony. You know, thoughts and prayers, again, don't do justice to what's happened to the people of Paradise. And I just think we all need to reflect on the fragility of life, how lucky we are, and do all that we can to support the survivors and the people living there. I know I spoke to the mayor of Paradise and the mayor of Chico, and I know Howard Chan spent a good part of his weekend with working on this, even though it didn't affect us directly. And our PIO team done a very good job. My staff, Mary Lynn and Tim Swanson, did a very good job just continuing to update what it is we can do as residents of Sacramento to help. I said Tim, did I not? I said our PIO, Tim Swanson and Mary Lynn Villinga. They continue to update us and will keep us updated in real time about what people can do, not just us, but what people can do to assist the worst wildfire in California history in terms of loss of life, and it's really unspeakable. And we're here for our brothers and sisters in that part of the state. Okay, one speaker.
I have one speaker, Rand Williams.
Hello, Council, Mr. Mayor. I was supposed to come here a little bit earlier. I got here right as one of my coworkers finished speaking today regarding the Twin Rivers housing complex, the rebuilding of it all, and how it's affecting the community and how it's affecting me personally. I'm one of the graduates of the MC3 core curriculum program that stemmed from this building project. In association with SHRA and SETA, they've come together to form this group that has really made a difference in the communities as far as the working people, giving jobs, and of course the housing complex that's being built, affording community places to stay that they would not otherwise be able to afford. This is something that I haven't done. I watch news. I listen to you guys on TV sometimes, some of the channels, and
I'm glad you're here.
I never thought I'd see myself come down here for any reason. Nothing really. It's all so distant to me, when I listen to it on television. But this particular project affected me directly, And for it to do that, it had to be something special to make me want to come out and speak in its behalf to advocate funding for the program, for the housing project. It's amazing. You know, a multi-million-dollar project usually doesn't touch the little guy.
Thank you, sir.
You don't really feel it. You hear about it. Oftentimes things aren't as they're promised. They don't come through. But this particular group of people that have assimilated themselves together have basically done everything they've said they do. I'm working now in the program, through the program. I've done demolition on the Dos Rios project. We've been retrained to do abatement, and we're doing other things. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Wasn't here. I hear you did pass the addendum, so.
Did.
Okay,
We
so
did, but
thank you very much.
Hey,
and I
you are the
appreciate
last speaker for a very long evening, and I'm glad you're the last speaker because you remind us why all this work we do as a community is so important. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.